and the recording will be subsequently be available for public listening. Can you ensure that your phones are either switched off or put onto airplane mode? I'll also remind members that this is about strategic issues and not operational ward issues. If you do have ward issues, then please have them dealt with outside of the meeting. Lucy Sederunt, apologies.
Good morning, everyone. We have 18 members present. We are quorate, and so far I have received apologies from Councillor Wood and Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Dempster is not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you very much. Move on to any declarations of interest. David?
Yes, Chairman, I'll declare an interest in item 8 and item 20 on the agenda. By virtue of the fact that I'm working closely with the Community Council and I've attended the VM1 meeting on the flood prevention scheme in Newton Stewart. So I'll leave the meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Yes, I too need to declare an interest in item 20, having also attended the VM1 meeting. So, yes, just need to pass that on. Thank you.
Jim, then Richard. Okay. Jim, have you got any? No. Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair, can I just get confirmation? Are you going to, Councillor Hagman, leave the meeting, or are you going to leave the meeting, or are you? Is your interest allow you to stay?
I won't be taking part of any votes if it comes down to a vote for the agreement. So yes, I'll leave the meeting.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is we have the Minute of Economy, Environment, Infrastructure meeting the 20th of June for approval. There is one issue on 3.1.7, was it? It wasn't Katie that was on the chorus, it was myself. If we could get that changed. Is that okay for approval then? Okay, thank you. Item 4 is minutes of the Harbour Subcommittee meeting on the 5th of July 2017 for approval. Okay.
I'm happy to propose the minutes, yes.
And seconded by John Young. Okay, that moves us on to the agenda items for today, members. I would note that report 16, made in Dumfries and Galloway project proposal, will be deferred to a future meeting to allow further consultations with stakeholders to take place. Item 5 is appointments to outside bodies, South West Scotland Community Rail Partnership. The report advises members of the change of name of the Community Rail Partnership for Carrick and Wigtown, Salesa, to the South West Scotland Community Rail Partnership. The report also recommends that Councillor Sloan and Giusti substitute. I hope I said that right, Andrew. Giusti, Chairman. Yeah, that's fine. I substitute continue to represent our council. The Director and his management team will take any questions on the report. Okay, so can we agree recommendation 2.1 to note the change in name, and 2.2 agree that Tommy and Andrew are on the committee as representatives and substitute? Yep. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 6 then, this is the report provides the details of the E&I activity-based budget and estimates for 2017-18. The key purpose of the ABB estimates is to provide information about where E&I spends its money. The ABB will also support members in considering identifications of savings and efficiencies over the upcoming financial period. Members should note that the ABB concentrates on budget estimates only. Non-financial information is provided within the existing E&I service business plan, and the Director and his management team will take any questions on the report. But Alison, anything to add to it?
No, Chair, nothing to add to the report, thank you.
Members? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. I think we're just here to note, it says to review and agree, but I think it's more of a noting thing. Probably what was missing for me, a couple of things I picked up in budget straplings was around about hospitality and members, subscription fees and membership fees. I would like to have got more detail around about them, but I actually thought, looking at this is what we'll be looking through as we go forward with the budget process. So I thought I might have seen some kind of strapline in the recommendations just to get an understanding from a group perspective as we go forward. What will be the I suppose the process be when it comes to consulting with the groups and so on and so forth as part of the budget process. And so we've got information here, keen to get into that. I don't think it's appropriate we take that up today because of the level of detail that we're actually looking for. But I think to get an outline of the process as we go forward and how the director will involve the different political groups, Chairman.
Also, you want to?
Yes, Chair, that will certainly be the case, and I think the whole budget process will be discussed and agreed with the senior leadership team within the council and the various groups.
I would also say that E&I Management Committee, they have said to me that they're willing to come around once the budget processes start to come around different groups for any information that you require, any questions and things like that. So, yeah. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. There was a couple of points. The first one was just by way of a question, really, on page 21. The difference between the outturn budget and outturn actuals and the budget estimates for next year for the supply, service and administration costs. So the first column is 34.45 million, and then the outturn actual is 41 million, and then the budget for this year is 40.5 million. And it was just really to get an explanation of what the 7 million was. Second question relates to fees and charges, and particularly to do with use of public highway, in particular parking spaces. I know there's been a few questions that I've had to raise to do with like market trader groups who obviously are a benefit to the local economy, etc., in small towns and villages. But just a bit of clarification about the fees that we charge groups like that. I'm happy to take answers to that particular one offline, but just to raise those 2 points. Thank you.
Caroline?
Thank you, Chair. To answer the first point, basically there was a change in methodology in the presentation of the budget between 16-17 and 17-18. In 16-17, the budgets were done for the items of expenditure that were European funded net. So in effect, they didn't reflect expenditure, the full expenditure and full income. They had a net expenditure. This year, 17-18, for clarification, for purposes of clarity, I've identified the costs separately. So that is part of the thing, and that's one of the reasons why, as you can see, the other income and the other grants lines have equally gone up between the 2 years, but not in terms of not so much in terms of the actuals. So it's a more clear picture of where they are. The other thing is that within the supplies, services and administration costs, in terms of the actuals, there were one-off elements. For example, the capital contribution to the Moat Bay project for £500,000 that is included in the actual, but obviously it's not an ongoing budget. It was a one-off. So there were one-off elements, which is why there's a decrease in your budget from the 41 to the 40 million. So this is the problem. They're a bit confusing. Hopefully, going forward, because we'll be using the same accounting basis, the same demonstration basis, we'll have a clearer picture when we get to next year. And I'll leave the fees and charges one till offline.
John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 28, under payments to other bodies, we've got £12.6 million to PFI and PPP payments. Would it be possible to have a brief breakdown on these payments, health, education, and also could we have a rough trend for these type of payments over the next 5 years? Thank you.
Director.
Thank you, Chair. Is that page 28, Councillor?
It's page 28 in my copies.
And PFI and PPP payments, well, the PFI payment, 12.6 million, is what we pay to our PFI private sector partner each year for the delivery of the waste PFI. But we can certainly give you some more detailed information on these payments offline.
Thank you.
Okay, no more members. Can we go to the recommendations then? Members are asked to review and agree the Economy, Environment, Infrastructure Budget 2017 as detailed in the appendix to this report, and we'll have an action plan to ensure that people understand the budget setting process for each of the groups in the council. Okay? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Finally, members, now come to item number 7, Economy, Environment, Infrastructure and Monitoring Report for 2017-18 for the period ended 30th of July. This report provides details of the projected performance of EAI revenue budget for the current financial year based on the position at 31st of July 2017. The report details a significant projected under-recovery of income resulting in a net expenditure overspend. The report also advises on actions to be implemented to address this challenging deficit. The report also advises members of a petition received from the Annandale Transport Initiative. Director, is there anything you want to add to that? We had discussions about actions already in place.
Yes, Chair, thank you. And this first report on our revenue account does represent a fair challenge to us as a department. It's caused by the continued under-recovery of planning fees and building standard warrant fees, which therefore affects our net budget as an over-expenditure of £899,000. Now, it's my intention to come back to members in November with an action plan on how we're going to address this. Obviously, this is based on the first quarter of the year, and we certainly hope that planning fees, building standard fees, will improve as the year goes on if the economy starts to liven up a bit within Dumfries and Galloway. And that action plan will give members a clear indication of how we're going to work as a management team to deliver a balanced budget at the end of the year. I'm not waiting to November to start making decisions and changing things to try and turn this round. We are already looking at a moratorium on vacancies, moratoriums on overtime, on grey mileage, and we are also analysing all our discretionary spend so we can actually put a halt on expenditure to come back and indicate in our action plan how we're going to address this. So that will be November, but be assured that the management team is already taking actions to address this.
Well, we're no cutting off our nose to spite our face in some of those aspirations, are we?
No, absolutely not. Obviously, the under-recovery of income is the big challenge, and we don't want to do anything that would prejudice that income increasing. So we will be very careful to that end.
Members, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Just going through these figures here, I'm a bit concerned with the underspend in economic development. I think this is a big problem area for Dumfries and Galloway, and I would like a bit of a reassurance that this isn't going to be used as something to subsidise some other inefficiencies elsewhere within the figures. You've just mentioned the fact that we're hoping that the economy will pick up to help with the under-recovery situation from planning, and it seems to fly slightly in the face of that to underspend in the economic development area.
Chris.
Thank you, Chair. The underspend that you see in this report relates to projects which are funded through the European Social Fund, and you will see in a subsequent report there have been some significant delays on the part of Scottish Government in releasing those monies, and so the recruitment of staff necessary to deliver projects has been delayed until the funds were available. We're now examining the full requirement of the staffing for employability and skills so that we can ensure that we have the capacity to deliver the programmes and services which are, as you say, essential to the development of the economy of Dumfries and Galloway. but at the same time being mindful of the budget constraints that the Directorate is facing.
Ian and Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose just to re-emphasise, when you see this nearly 900,000 head for a million of an overspend, I know it's related to the report, it states quite clearly, it states it, once or twice it states under recovery of planning application fees and building warrant fees, but it's quite clearly outlined it's an overspend, and it's as simple as that. In many parts within the committee report, we kind of sit here and think, well, that's okay, when you compare it to the rest of the directorates across the council. Fair enough, we're looking at maybe coming back in a couple of months' time, trying to redress that, whether it's got to the corporate centre and asking for this potential, well, this overspend, it's certainly, it's estimated, but I think it's pretty much a fait accompli. But how do we actually address that properly? I've had this conversation many times with the director and other members of the senior management team in regards to this. Is it an under recovery or an overspend? It's a statutory duty placed on the council. We don't do it with social work, we don't do it with education department and so on and so forth, but we keep relating back to the planning department as an under recovery rather than an overspend. There may be performance issues there, there may not, but we don't see that level of detail here. But you'd automatically think if there's less fees coming in, there's less work needed to be getting done, but that's maybe not necessarily the case, but it's easy to make that assumption. I think enterprise and services trading as well, it's showing a loss at 169, that should be showing a surplus, I would have thought. I would imagine that's a bit of a warning sign as well. If the organisation that's supposed to be providing a profit for us is showing a loss, that's what it's certainly looking like there as an overspend, but maybe get some detail in regards to that. Again, would raise another alarm bell. But Chairman, that's my immediate thoughts or points to start off with, but like when we get to recommendations, I would like to come back and make some particular recommendations then, please.
I'll ask the director then come in first, then Steve on the planning issue, and then Ronnie on the enterprising. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge Councillor Crowther's remarks. It is an overspend of net expenditure. If you look at the actual expenditure overspend, it's £114,000, and that's estimated in the first quarter of the year, and our total expenditure is £101 million, so it's only 0.1% on expenditure. The issue we have is to attract income, and that income comes from people applying for planning consents and building standing warrants, and that just is not happening. It's interesting, and I'll ask Steve to give you more detail on this, that our planning applications have actually increased, but it's the cost per application that's gone down, and that has given us the under recovery. So I'll ask Steve just to elaborate.
Just before you come in, Steve, Caroline, do you want to come in on?
Sorry, could I just clarify one point about the 169,000? That isn't a deficit. That is a non-achievement of the £911,000 surplus. So in effect, the surplus at the moment is 762,000. We are making a surplus. We're just not making as much surplus as we should. I just wanted to clarify that position.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just really to respond in terms of some of the contextual information that perhaps we're not able to put into this type of report. But as Alistair's mentioned, the intention is to bring a fuller report back in November, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to put some of the bigger contextual information in. But in terms of the point about what this says about trends in terms of application numbers and workloads and so on, as Alistair's already referenced, the interesting thing about planning fees is although we're down compared with last year on planning fees by 15% in the first quarter, over the same period we actually received 20% more applications. So the implication of that is that we're getting more smaller applications and less of the larger fee-paying applications. And we're seeing a similar trend as well with building warrants. The building warrant fee income is significantly down on last year by 44%. But the actual numbers of building warrant applications that we're dealing with, they're only down by 9% over the same period. So again, it's an indication that some of the big projects perhaps have dried up. Last year we had a lot of the big schools projects. We had the hospital project. So there's an indication of a shift, a trend towards perhaps people holding back from investing in the larger scale projects and concentrating on the smaller ones. So that provides a little bit more context. I'm happy to take any further questions on that, Chair.
Thanks. Just really, with what Caroline said, I mean, that would cover the issue with the enterprise and budget. So are you happy with that?
Thought I wasn't working there, Chairman. I suppose in regards to what Steve's saying, I still think again, planning is and building wants, for that matter, a great indicator usually of how the local economies thriving or not. I still think there either needs to be a realignment of a budget, and potentially that'll be addressed, and we need to stop referring to this under recovery. We need to take it seriously. If we get a planning correct, as far as I'm concerned, we get that right, the economy follows. It follows suit. I don't think we're just there yet, Chairman. But like I say, I'd like to come back when we get to recommendations, please. I've got a couple of things I'd like to put forward.
Well, there are targets within the budget, and it is under recovery of the target. So that, you know, I can understand what you're saying. Richard, and then Stephen, and then Tommy.
Thanks, Chair. 2.5 refers to a petition received from Arundel Transport Initiative, paragraph 5.1 to 5.5. The ATI, as we call it, fulfills a very important social function in Arundel and Eskdale. And in a fair world, we would be supporting them fully to provide their services. Obviously, when we're £900,000 short in the budget, it's very difficult to take on new things. I think the Arundel Transport Initiative's problem started quite a number of years ago when the council decided to move from central funding of these organisations and hand over the responsibility to the area committees. Obviously, the area committees have got less money to deal with it, and obviously the ATI has suffered. So I think perhaps for our next budget, we should consider looking at these local transport initiatives as a central strategic function budget process. So I'd like it to be considered at budget time to see if we can incorporate it in the central budget pot. Obviously, we're talking about a £900,000 overspending. We can't really be considering new proposals, but I think we've got to be consistent throughout our budget process. In item or two on, there's talk about new expenditure paid for by the sale of some vehicle assets, and should that money just not be going back into the pot? And in item 16, there's a great proposal to support the Made in Dumfries and Galloway project. Wait a
minute now, Roger. This is item number 7. We're not going to go on to item number 16 because it's been deferred till next week. Now, when you mention about transferring the budgets to area committees, you were part of the administration that actually allowed that to happen. So let's not go on with that. Let's stick to this actual report. We're not going to go on to 16, okay?
No, I think we're all responsible for our actions, Chairman. I'm quite happy to take responsibility for my actions. The point I was making is we've got to be consistent. If we're saying to a local organisation, you can't have any money because the budget's overcooked, it's not the budget, we've got to look at our proposals there, and we've got to be consistent, I think, Chairman. And I think I think we don't need to take a confrontational point of view.
The fact of the matter is, Richard, you're taking things out of context here. You're taking things out of context here. All right. There's nobody saying that local organisations are not going to get a budget through area committees or anything like that. That's you taking things out of context as per usual. The issue is, have you got a question for the officer with regards to Arundel Transport Initiative?
Obviously, I've made a request that we consider it as part of the budget process for next year, that it could be considered to be set.
As part of your budget process, of course.
Consider that at that point. That's a fair point, isn't it, Chairman?
Have you got any answers for that? Do you know what the question is?
Chair, budget setting process is obviously for the council to decide, and we will, as officers, will work with that as and when we're asked to. Chair.
Thank you. And Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I've got a couple of questions just on the Arundel Transport Initiative. Effectively, we've been asked to note that. I think what I'd like to see, and maybe officer can give me a sort of response in terms of, so what's next? I mean, effectively, there's a petition come in, we've been asked to note it, there's an acknowledgement, but what I'd really like to see is, okay, how are we going to take on board that petition and actually support the group in an appropriate way to sort of help them become sustainable or be more sustainable? And does that tie in any sense to the budget line in the previous report on page 34, which is 114,000 payments to community transport groups? So a wee bit of clarity on that, because that is in the budget. Also, just on the planning, can I maybe get a wee bit of clarity in terms of how we're approaching pre-application advice? Because I think we agreed to set a charge for that, but are we still offering that service, and what's the status of that, and what kind of income does it generate? Does that have an impact on the income or under recovery that we're experiencing? And finally, just on enterprising services trading, I think we maybe ought to be careful whenever we're sort of getting the final outturn position for the budget that we're not varying or offsetting things that aren't part of the trading budget to the trading budget, because I think we need to have a degree of separation there so that we're actually protecting the budgets that we've decided to deliver as a council service, and letting the trading service fight its own economic battles to bring in the business that it needs to meet its targets. So it's really just to get an assurance that we're not, as was touched on earlier, maybe using an underspend in one area to pay for an under recovery in another area. So it's just on those points. Thank you.
Okay, we'll answer the Annandale Transport one first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, this relate to that 114,000. They are part of Annandale Transport Initiative, are very much involved in the public social partnership development, which that budget relates to. They're a very active member in that. It doesn't provide core grant funding for the organisation, but it will allow them the opportunity to generate revenue, which will then support their sustainability going forward. But I'm looking to bring a report back on the PSP development to either November or January meeting to give you more context around that as well.
On the same point there, and in terms of what we've been asked to note, what is the next action in terms of what we're going to do to help support the group in recognition of the petition?
Chair, the petition relates to the funding. The funding for the ATI comes through the communities section, not through E&I. It's because it was a transport issue, it's been sat with this area.
Steve, on in.
Yes, Chair. In relation to pre-application charges, at the moment, as you say, we don't charge for pre-application inquiries, so that has no bearing on the financial position with regard to under recovery of fee income. What we've had to do, however, in the short term, is temporarily suspend the pre-application service because of resource pressures, with a view to relaunching it as a fee-paying service that we can then properly resource. We have the proposals worked up, so we intend to relaunch that service very shortly.
And enterprising.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we will work the enterprising service through the very volatile commercial market that is out there, and we'll work with finance colleagues to ensure the returns are met, and we will also be reporting fully to the enterprising subcommittee in relation to the trading and operational position. So that will be the scrutiny that will go forward with that will also link into this committee.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it's a separate subcommittee that looks at that in particular, but I think my point was really to do with how we manage underspends in one area to offset under recoveries, for example, in trading service, which I think misses the spirit of what the trading service is about, because it's there to generate money, not, if you like, take advantage of monies that have been saved in other parts of the services we deliver as a non-trading service provider. So I think it's more the overall budget assurance rather than necessarily per se the enterprise and sub side of it. Is it possible to get that assurance?
Right.
I think the simple answer is yes, we will endeavour and report that accordingly. It's not about one subsidising the other, it's about having transparency of what we report in relation to the trading and and funded trading services.
Caroline?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that although they are combined within this report, actually in the overall council accounts, trading account is completely separate from the revenue funded, the general fund accounts. So in effect, although they're combined for ease of use here, within the overall annual report, they are reported separately and they are a separate line. So there is a distinction between those two, just to reassure you.
Tommy, then Jim, and then Ian.
Thanks very much, Chair. I listened closely to what the Director was saying earlier on when he was talking about measures having to be taken to bring budgets into line. I can fully understand that. One of the things the Director talked about was a moratorium on jobs. This one particularly worries me because of the effect it has on the remaining staff. You know, I think it should be monitored very closely. There will be indicators like extra days off, sickness, etc. I think we've got to be very careful on that one.
I think that's why I was asking if we shouldn't be cutting our face off to spite our nose, or cutting our nose off to spite our face, one of the two, Director.
I acknowledge Councillor Sloan's comments on that. It's not jobs per se, it's just not filling vacancies at the moment until we get a clearer picture of how our budget is going to balance or not. So it's holding vacancies open, but again, I'll make that quite clear in the action plan I come back to members with.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Just a cautionary note in this Iron Transport Initiative. I would hope we're not trying to be selective here. There are transport projects all across the region. They all deserve support and attention. I know the old adage about a great no one eye gets. It shouldn't be the case. We should treat all of them the same. We've already got a partnership with Newton Stewart Initiative, and we're looking at how we deal with transport initiatives across the region. And this is a regional aspect, not just one because members happen to like the project or because we've got a petition about it.
I think that was answered in that it was under the communities for funding side of things, but the regional partnership that's on looking at strategic side of things is done through the officers in the chair. Ian, Sean wants to come in first. Are you coming back in with? Right, okay. Sean, can you come in first?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points. It's really just with regards to what Steve was saying. I think members would probably appreciate a little bit more information on how we predict the budgets, because obviously if we don't get as many of the larger applications, and that can have a dramatic impact on the budget. So it's really just a little bit more information on how we can predict that. We know what's in our own capital programme, but how do you predict other kind of potential projects for the next year? Just a little bit more information about that, and how we, because there'll be a split between the smaller applications and the large applications, I take it, that make up the budget. Second point, 4.2.3, it's with regards to the delay in some of the commencement of the capital programme has led to a reduction of 750,000 in value of work for enterprise and DG. I take it that part of the measures to mitigate that will hopefully be an acceleration, a potential acceleration of some of these capital works to try and make up a bit of lost time. Is that correct?
All right, who's going to answer this one then?
I'll start, Chair. In response to Councillor Marshall's comments, I think the answer is yes. We are working with colleagues across the council to ensure that projects can be brought forward. We've done a comparator from previous years, and there is a difference, and there's always a difference in what works are coming through in relation to their value. But we're working with colleagues in property and architectural services to ensure as much work is expedited to allow the catch-up to be made on that process, and we'll be monitoring that over the coming months to see how that's progressing.
Chair, yeah, if I could address the question, how do we predict? Well, with great difficulty, probably is a simple answer to that. The income lines for both building warrant fees and planning fees are very volatile. So we can look at an element of trends, looking at past trends. That in itself shows how difficult it can be to try to estimate, because if we look back at planning application fees over the last 3 years, 2 of the last 3 years, we've been not far off hitting the target. But then last year, we under-recovered by 360 odd thousand. So it's very volatile, and I think the real answer to this is that we have to find a mechanism by which we can smooth that volatility in income through our budget process, and that's something again that we'll deal with in a bit more detail when we bring the report back in November. But I think we have to find a way to smooth those ups and downs so that we're not constantly coming back here and having to report under recoveries against budget.
Ian, just I'll ask for a wee bit of leeway because Graham wants to come in from your own group for the first time. So Ian, Graham, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for letting me in. It's the moratorium on jobs. I'm a wee bit concerned about that. What Tommy said, I've great sympathy with him, but I'm going to ask the Director, is that not going to hold up the possibility of increasing our income or getting our income up to where we need it to be by the fact that we're not going to have enough folk there to do the work and get the planning applications, etc., through in time?
Director.
Yes, Chair. I did mention that in my introduction, and that we're not going to cut our nose off to spite our face. We have to keep income increasing, and we certainly won't be doing anything that prejudices the trading account or the income for planning and building standards. So it is a balanced approach, but basically where we can hold vacancies, we will, but we will not be affecting services that are income generating.
Okay, Ian, what do you know? Thanks for that, by the way.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for getting a chance to come back at the recommendations. I mean, I think from 2.1 to 2.5, I'm more than content with them, but what I would like to add is a 2.6 if that's possible, and that's looking at a solution roundabout Annandale Transport Initiative possibly today, and maybe we could address that. Now, I know as all the ZERA committee members of Annandale and Estill have all supported them in the past to a large degree, which states clearly within the report why that's changed, how it's changed, and without getting into that argument. But so I think because of the importance of relevance, and it states quite clearly within the report that there's a chance, again, I don't know if they're going insolvent, but certainly it's going to have a major impact if they didn't get this financial deficiency, you could say, for a better way of describing it, sorted in the short term, that kind of real repercussions, and we know what effect that'll have in the local transport in regards to Annandale and Estill. So I would move, Chairman, that we, if we're considering it, we've agreed 2.1 to 2.5, that we agree to fund Annandale Transport Initiative to the value of 36k as outlined in paragraph 5.2 within the report. It clearly states that is the potential shortfall for this coming year. And it's using the same mechanisms outlined in paragraph 3.4. It'd be a one-off allocation from corporate resources. So it's quite clear there's a mechanism there which we could do that. It's a small amount. It might not need 36, might only need 20, but certainly I think it's clearly outlined within the report, the impact that could have. We could actually resolve this today, Chairman, pretty much ring-fence the 36, go to the corporate centre, and it's dealt with, and that gives a reassurance for the next financial year for this organisation, and look at the further schemes that are coming forward, as I think Douglas outlined earlier, and other members. I would move that, Chairman, formally.
I would have some concerns about that, because obviously the remit of Annandale Transport Initiative comes under communities, but Director, do you want to come back on that particular point?
Well, I think it's very difficult for members to consider that, because we have no report that indicates how we would support that, where we would find the money, and how we would balance our budget, because that certainly isn't something that we currently fund, and we would have to look at the consistency of that across the piece, rather than just one community transport group. So I don't think there's enough information for members to address this issue, but I'll refer to my governance colleague to give a ruling on that.
Clarify, because I think I've made it absolutely clear we think the funding will get from, and I'll repeat it if we want, if Lucy needs that. I think I've put a mechanism in place, we've already addressed it, say we can use it in regards to the £899,000 if there's a shortfall there. So I think we could use the same mechanism here, and that's what I've outlined. And to absolutely clear it's in paragraph 3.4, and it's a one-off allocation from corporate resources. Which again is
the issue I have, I mean,
page 48. I think it's competent, Chairman, if that's what maybe the question is in regards to the motion.
I'll wait on the response from Lucy first, all right, and then I'll take Richard and then Sean.
I would have to say I do have some concerns about the competency, given the lack of information. As Alistair's pointed out, there isn't enough. We'd probably have sent another report with that information would be sensible to come back.
Can I make a suggestion that, as Lucy's advised, it isn't a competent motion, but what I would suggest is a further report coming back in November to say, you know, how we could assist Annandale Transport Initiative, if it is our remit, I have to say, because I don't think it is.
Clarification. This was received back in July. Certainly I've seen in the local press that they have been successful in other grants, so we don't actually know what the position is with the ATI, what the shortfall is now. There's also the question of, you know, what is the most appropriate service committee for this to go to. So if you had to do another report, it's maybe just, I'm a bit uncomfortable with the fact that we haven't got the most up-to-date information of what the shortfall is with this organisation. There's also the issue as well that this is 1 year. We've always said that, you know, these projects have to be sustainable. So, you know, if we fund it for this year, what happens next year? We need an exit strategy as well. So it might be that there needs to be a report, but it has to go to the appropriate committee.
I mean, there is a report coming back about community transport. I think you said, was it November or January?
Yeah, I was going to bring a report back on the development of the public social partnership, which is the policy development funding. It wasn't in relation particularly to community or to one group within the community transport sector.
I think it would be useful for all partners in that area, because taking what Jim said, it's not about just one individual group, it's about what happens across the region. This is a strategic report at the end of the day, so we'd be looking at that side of thing. Richard, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just I would support what you said initially, Chairman, that we get a report back on how we could help the ATI.
There is one coming back for all transport initiatives anyway, so I think that's already in the realms of the committee anyway. Jim, did you want to say something?
No, just to rehearse what you're saying, Chairman, there is an issue here about being selective, and that's what I tried to caution members about. This is about community transport. Therefore, it's a regional issue. And we can't just be selective and bring a report on one. We either bring a report on all, or we bring a general report on how we support community initiatives, because what we don't want to do is alienate every other community initiative group across the whole region. I think it's unfair and unreasonable, and I'm pleased with the suggestion you put forward. If it is a suggestion that we listen to, or we take the report Douglas brings forward on a strategy, rather than being specific about one particular group which operates in a small location in respect to the whole of Dumfries and Galloway.
Okay, I think bringing this to a conclusion then, I'm quite willing to move the recommendations as are, but we are going to receive a report on community transports anyway in the future. Ian, I don't know if you want to take...
Chairman, if you could be a wee bit more precise in regards to that, I'm happy to withdraw the motion if we can get the reassurance that it's got to be sooner rather than later. If we're saying, I mean, I think the sustainability part was absolutely right, but we've looked at commissioning, this is potentially an option, and that might be the way forward, the best way forward. I think it going back to 5th of December 2015, was it? Or 16? 15? I think it was the day that the big flood anyway. Everybody was there over at Castle Douglas with a full meeting in regards to it. It's not progressing at the pace it should be progressing, Chairman, and that's the point I'm really trying to make. We need to address this sooner rather than later, and I'm thinking at the latest in the next couple of months. So if we get the reassurance that we're getting a report back to whatever committee to address this and other and problems similar to it, but in particular, we've got Annandale Transport Initiative sitting here in front of us. We know as local members the impact, if they folded today, the impact that would have on the council and their budget. It would be far more than the 36k that we're actually looking at here, so we have to take this seriously. Chairman, so if we can get reassurance for yourself in regards to the immediacy of this actual report coming back, and the council's taking it seriously, happy to withdraw my motion.
Okay, so I've been given assurance we'll get that in November for all transport. Is that achievable? It better be. So members, can we go to the recommendation with that assurance? The recommendation is 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5. Agreed? And we'll add that we'll bring a general report back for that.
No, not general report.
Yeah.
On
On the social transport partnership. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now moving on to item number 8, which is Infrastructure and Vehicle Fleet Asset Classes Catapult Programme and Street Lighting Spend to Save Programme, 2017-18 Finance and Progress Monitoring Report. This report provides members with a financial and progress update for projects and programmes contained within the 2017-18 capital programmes for asset classes of infrastructure and vehicle fleet. It also provides an update on the Street Lighting Spend to Save programme, which I think is a good news story. The report also advises members of a petition received regarding Lockerbie parking. The Director and his management team will take any questions on the report unless you have anything to add to it, Alistair.
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, members. Jim.
Thank you, Chair. 319 and 320 in relation to the replacement for the Sparling Bridge. My question is, will the bridge replacement remain an integral part of the flood protection scheme?
Stephen?
Yes, the bridge replacement will remain an integral part of the flood protection scheme. The idea would be to bring it forward in terms of the delivery of the works on the ground in terms of the replacement bridge would be as soon as possible, and we're targeting in terms of looking at the new bridges of advised in the report. We'd be looking at having that bridge on the ground in the next financial year, and any of the works to the bridge that are required to make it complementary to the rest of the options that we're developing in the flood protection scheme, we would seek to incorporate those into the design of the replacement bridge.
Jim?
So it will therefore qualify for Scottish Government funding?
The discussions we've had with Scottish Government and Perth and Kinross Council under a similar scenario where a bridge was replaced and upgraded, it was taken as being qualifying for the grant funding from Scottish Government. Under this scenario, the bridge we're looking at, with it being reprovisioned, if we can reprovision a new bridge with a wider crossing and make it pedestrian and cycle friendly in terms of usage, there's also the potential for us to seek to draw down funding from Sustrans, and officers have had early meetings with Sustrans on that, with a view to developing a bid to part fund the additional cost of putting a new bridge in over the cost of replacing the existing bridge. But yes, back to your original question, certainly discussions so far, we see that it would qualify for significant funding in relation to the flood protection scheme that we're taking forward, given that it does, raising the deck of the bridge does give some benefits in the locality of the structure.
Okay, then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to the timescale of this. I note that in the report it states that it will take approximately 3 months from the date of an application in terms of the planning authority. My question is also in relation to the funding. Do we have to have the funding in place before we can commence with this project? And if so, how long will that funding application take before we get some answers back? And the reason why I ask this is because the community within Newton Stewart have already been waiting for their bridge replacement or their bridge to be reinstated. And my concern is just in terms of the timing, and is it feasible that this bridge is going to be put in place by next year?
James?
Thank you, Councillor. With respect to the funding, the way funding works for flood protection schemes at present is that we submit to Scottish Government on an annual basis a spend profile for works that we will be undertaking. So principally for the Newton Stewart scheme, we are submitting applications for monies associated with our costs for our consultants to design the scheme. There will be nothing stopping us in our application for funding to indicate construction costs, design and construction costs of the bridge as well. Assuming it's an integral part of the scheme, then we would look to seek 80% funding in the following year for the design and construction of a new bridge. Obviously, we would have to identify monies within our own capital budgets, and we have done that within the infrastructure asset class budget for the remaining 20%. And there'll be a balancing exercise if monies can also be made available from Sustrans funding as well.
Okay. Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Very happy with this report, actually. I think it's a really good report in regards to our update and how we're progressing. So I'd like to, a couple of things, if you don't mind, Chairman, I'll take a wee quick minute with this. Thank Mr. Speedy, Stephen Herriot, right down to Ailey McLeod, right down to the team at Hart Hill in regards to delivering the house project. There was a bit of confusion over that, but excellent. Can't thank you enough in regards to how that actually came to fruition, without going into any great amount of detail. Chairman, I think a couple of queries, if you don't mind. One's in your ward, if you don't mind me asking. It's right at paragraph, page 65, 3.39. It's the landslip at Glen Terrace. I just wondered, it's been ongoing for a wee while now. Clearly there's an indication to get on with this. When I read this, I just thought a cofferdam solution might have been a quicker, simpler, easier solution in regards to what's being referred to here, unless that's what it's meaning by a geotechnical solution. I just thought it'd been a quick, efficient, it'd been done this in 3 or 4 weeks. Had that been considered? If not, why not? And maybe the scheme that's coming forward through our private sector will be a better scheme. Back of the hill, just one more, if you don't mind, Chairman. It's on page 84. It's programme works in regards to drainage. I'm getting lobbied quite heavily on that. That's a particular scheme, as far as I understand, is where the local authority are discharging surface water on a particular person's property, and this is measures to actually alleviate that, so they're getting flooded out at particular times. Just reassurances that that's in play to be done. We're not going to see that as part of a slippage programme falling into next year. Just reassurance in regards to that, Chairman.
Okay. Stephen?
Councillor Carruthers, just picking up on the Glen Terrace. It is a location, actually, we've had some significant problems in the past. And with respect to simplicity of the design, our design staff have looked at it, and actually we believe it's out with the capabilities of engineering design to undertake this work. So the tender that we're putting out for the works is a site investigation contract, along with, based on the results of the site investigation, an option to design a scheme based on the results of the site investigation. So I would acknowledge that we've been challenged with this project and not hit the timescales that we would have liked to have achieved. But I think that taking it the way we are is going to offer the best long-term solution to it. We don't want to repair part of the problem and for it to happen again in that location.
Can I just come back on that particular point? Just so what I'm hearing, what James is saying, right? That's fair enough, absolutely fair point. But for the report, I think this money has been agreed for about a year now, and we're only getting into that point where we're actually got to take that forward. Is that correct? Because if it is, we're definitely behind the times. We should have been further in advance as where we are now.
Yeah, we are behind the time we should have been. I'm not going to deny that. I think but there's a lot of challenges on the function at the moment, and we'll progress that one as best we can.
Stephen, on the other point, back at home.
Yep. In terms of the drainage, we're picking up in the report that's due to commence in the third quarter. So we're about to get into that drainage programme, and you can see that nothing, there's some works have been complete so far on the Stewartry, but most of the works will be picked up in the quarter coming up. We don't anticipate, there's no particular detail on any of the schemes that we anticipate a problem in not delivering at the present time.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for giving us the time to come back. Just this particular scheme, back again, the 22nd of July with Anne and East Riggs, Gretna Kinney, we got a lot of water. This was flooded again back on 22nd of July, so it is important if we can address this problem sooner rather than later, Chairman.
But I think on that particular case, I thought the council and the other services actually worked very well together in organising that. I think some people have got to realise that what they put down the drains, of course, doesn't help the matter. But you know, you've had the assurance that it's actually going to be done. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a few questions in this one. The first one being just 2.4, the agreeing to delay the works under the Flood Risk Management Capital Programme for Moffat Cemetery. Obviously, I understand the narrative that's given in the report, but I think this has been a a piece of work that's been going on for a while, and obviously this is another delay. So is there an assurance that I can get this would be one of the first ones to be get done in the next financial year, 2018, given the sort of length of time that's been going on? Secondly, Lockerbie parking in relation to the train station. I think I'm a wee bit concerned at the length of time that the phase 2 part of the programme's taken, in terms of the additional spaces, and also in terms of the phase 3. It mentions that we'd effectively been asked to agree an amount, effectively to sort of fund to some extent the phase 3 development. So it'd be helpful to kind of know what that is, or when we're likely to know what that is, and again the timescale, because this has been going on for a number of years. And while we're at it in Lockerbie Town Centre, we've got the B723 completion of the works to the High Street. So I'm just wondering, when is that actually going to get done? Because that's about 3 years in the waiting now. And finally, on page 91, you've got the High Street in Moffat A701 being removed from the programme. I'm a wee bit concerned about that, because correct me if I've picked it up wrong, but I'm sure this may have related to a 20 mile an hour potential speed limit after some traffic measurements have been carried out. So I think the mean speed was about 19 point something miles per hour, which would, and we'll see this in a later report in these papers.
Can I just come in there, Stephen? Because I did say at the start, this is not particularly about ward issues, this is strategic issues, and I understand this is a strategic report, but you're dealing with mainly in what's in your ward here, and a lot of these answers could have been asked offline, questions could have been asked offline to get that question. And I would ask members, if there are particular issues within the report, when you get if you ask officers the week before, then perhaps you would get the answer before you came here. I'll let it go this time, but if members...
Well, noted, Chair, and thanks for keeping me right.
If I could maybe just pick up on some of those points and maybe hand on for a bit more detail if that's required. But the Moffat Cemetery works have been quite problematic, and part of the reason for that has been getting agreement with the landowner. And without getting into too much detail on that has kind of added to the delay. And we have targeted resources at some of the more kind of critical flood-related works like Cairnryan and delivering that, and moving forward in some of the minor works, and that's retargeted or refocused resources. We have reviewed the project when we're asking members to consider letting it slip into next year, and we're confident that through the winter and the spring that we can progress the design, and we'd be looking to maybe start on site around about May 2018 to get those works done. Again, I would say that that's contingent on us getting reasonable agreement with the landowner on access, and the works there would require a closure on the road, so there would be some disruption on the 701, and would be installing a replacement culvert that would relieve the kind of flooding problem at the property local to that culvert, the existing culvert. It also includes works within the cemetery area to improve the drainage, to get the water down and through to the Annan, and that in itself requires quite a bit of input and agreement with SEPA because of the proximity of a water course in relation to the cemetery. So yes, we're looking at cracking on with that in the summer of next year. The question about the High Street in Lockerbie in terms of the footways, I have an outstanding email to you on that, but I hope to come back with some information on that and indicate that it would be probably in the Q4 of this financial year that we'd be able to move on that one. The Lockerbie parking, in terms of the timescales, and I'll maybe pass to Douglas for a bit more detail on this. It's very much a project being led by Swestrans, and I attended the last board meeting of Swestrans to hear an exempt report being taken there that was looking at the options and was considering some of the issues with land ownership and maybe some of the expectations to be overcome and the value of land without getting into detail, as on the phase 3 works will be problematic. There's quite some high costs required there to realise parking in close proximity to the station. The administration, the council and the partnership agreement identifies that is one of the priorities in delivering enhanced parking at that location, and it's certainly something the Swestrans board are interested in and have been over a number of years as progressing as a project. So we will keep those phase 3 parking solutions, or one of them in particular, we will keep on the agenda for development and for reporting back to the Swestrans board. Subsequent to that, we would come back to EEI committee with more detail on the costs and the impact that might have on future years' budget allocations for committee to make a decision on supporting further parking in Lockerbie. The phase 2 is taking a bit of time, and that is in relation to the works being in very close proximity to the rail line and keeping Network Rail at the table and on side with the improvement works there. But Douglas, is there anything you want to add from a kind of Swiss Trans side?
If I put my Swiss Trans hat on, yes. There's a number of issues with the sites in Lockerbie, and Stephen's addressed most of that. The costs have risen significantly, and Swiss Trans has had to take a decision to step back and seek additional funding support from other partners. I've met recently with the Network Rail and with the head of rail strategy at Transport Scotland, and also started meetings with the operating companies to look at partnership funding for what is going to be a multi-million-pound parking problem, the cost funding problem in Lockerbie.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. My question relates to item 3.54 in terms of external funding on page 67. I'm really pleased to say that we were successful in receiving an award of £0.205 million from the Scottish Government for cycling, walking and safer streets. And I note that in this item, it states that we've agreed to put £0.1 million of this allocation towards the cycleways works associated with the new hospital. My question is, do we have any plans for the £0.105 million that's left from this budget? I'm aware certainly of two issues that I was raised yesterday just alone with safety outside the local school and a footpath along the A75 which is used by walkers and cyclists. So I'm sure there's many projects throughout the region, but do we have anything specific that this budget will be used for in relation to cycling and walking? Thank you.
John?
Yes, good morning. The report indicates that the remaining allocation of that funding will be apportioned to schemes that have been previously reported in the speed limit and traffic calming and cycleway programmes. As you'll see at Appendix 4, we have a significant number of schemes already in the programme, and the additional funding we're saying should be apportioned to some of those projects. There are lots of other potential projects out there, as you indicate, in relation to a school in Newton Stewart, and it was a useful meeting we had about that. We have issues raised at Lockerbie Primary School and at Elmvale Primary School in recent times, and they could potentially be considered to be added to the programme for future years. You mentioned about a footway on the A75. Obviously, the A75 is a trunk road, so that might not be an appropriate use for council funding.
Thank you.
Jim McComb and then Jim Dempster.
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to primary schools without a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. I assume in each case that a full public consultation takes place before the 20-mile-per-hour limit is agreed. The reason I ask this is because I understand Auchencairn Community Council requested that the 20-mile-per-hour limit actually be extended to incorporate most of the settlement. Will there be full public consultation?
Take it away, you, John.
Yes, thanks again, Chair. Consultation of proposals is undertaken in the first instance generally with Police Scotland and with local members. The current top school programme is the one at Gatehouse of Fleet Primary School, and proposals for that school have actually been with the parent council and the school since just before the school summer holidays, so I need to chase that up to see if we can actually get a response from them and move that forward. Usually there's a requirement, or certainly for any proposal for 20 mile/h speed limit, there's a requirement for statutory advertising to be undertaken. So each scheme has been dealt with on a kind individual basis, reflecting on the view from local members and perhaps also the scale of the scheme that we're proposing. Auchencairn Community Council, I must be honest, I'm not aware of, I certainly don't recall any request to consider a 20 mile per hour speed limit for the whole of that community.
Jim Dempster?
I thought, I mean, I'm a member of West Trans, and I thought we'd made a decision in a private session. And I don't think maybe it's featured here in the way we had decided, but that's whether or no we could actually put in print what we decided in private session, I don't know. But I thought we made a decision, and I thought it'd been best to convey that decision to the wider population or the wider group of folk that are looking for improvements in Lockerbie. I think the other thing is, it says in 3, consider to part fund further development. It doesn't say in here how much, I don't think, or as I've missed it. And the last thing is, this is the second report we've had mentioning a petition, and a petition then managing to have a report presented. And I hope that this is no a sign of things to come. I don't know whether a petition should generate the kind of activity that we're seeing in these papers, or we'll find ourselves dealing with a lot of petitions over the forthcoming months and years.
Yeah.
It's appropriate if the council receives a petition that it's reported to members, and both of these petitions being transport orientated, it was felt appropriate they be presented to the EEI committee to ask members to note that we've received these petitions.
I accept that, but it seems to then generate a bit of activity and somehow prioritises that project simply because on the basis of a petition. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make. I hope that's not the case, or we'll create problems for ourselves that we'll regret later.
Yeah, that's certainly not the case, Jim. I mean, obviously petitions are petitions at the end of the day, and people are aware of whatever the petition is, but noting it is totally different to saying we're going to bring another report here. But we'll, you know, we do the best we can for the people that we represent in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, and hopefully that's been shown. There's no other members, so therefore it's my turn. I think, sorry. Malcolm, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. It's just well, two things actually. One's a wee comment, another one's a question. It's in relation to these ladders at Annan Harbour. Now, much as we welcome the council taking responsibility for the safety of people at the harbour, it's for the safety of whom? Are these ladders for people to recover themselves from the harbour if they fall into it, or are they to enable people to access vessels from the harbour wall? And in which case, if it's for people being removed from the water, is there any steps being taken to make sure these ladders are not blocked by moored vessels? Now, the second thing, this isn't a ward issue for me, actually, so I'd just like to stress, as Stephen was mentioning, about the parking situation at Lockerbie, because it is chaotic, and I think it is a matter of urgency, but that's just a comment. Thanks.
Yeah, I wish people would walk at times and use public transport, you know. The harbour one, Stephen?
Yes, if I could just come back. We had taken a report in the spring to EEI committee on Annan Harbour, and we pointed out that the council actually own the harbour, although we're not the harbour authority, and there was a bit of detail on that and the implications of owning the asset and being responsible to make sure that it was maintained in a safe manner. And it's to that end there's a kind of realisation, or in terms of asset management, there's a need for works to be done to the Annan Harbour to make sure that it can be operated in a safe manner. Not that we're responsible as an authority, as we are in the 5 council harbours, for the risk assessments under the Port Marine Safety Code in relation to Annan Harbour, but that we are responsible as an asset owner to make sure that it is maintained, and the report itself covered a bit of detail on the kind of long-term implications there might be to the structure and the short-term implications that might be to some of the infrastructure. So the ladder provision and the kind of fenders adjacent to the ladders are more focused on the mooring of boats at that location in a safe manner, so that safe access and egress can be taken from the harbour side to the vessels.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You did let me ask my question, but it's just I didn't get an answer to this part of it, so I take it on board. I'll try not to be parochial, but it was in relation to the A701 High Street Moffat that was being removed from the programme on page 91. Does that relate to the 20 mile an hour limit? And it's just to get a bit of clarity on that and why it's been removed. Thank you.
John?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. A number of those locations have been added through the identification of a cluster of accidents at certain locations, and when we've undertaken the review of clusters this year, there is no longer a cluster of accidents in Moffat High Street. As was indicated, we undertook measurements of speeds, and certainly within the High Street the speeds were low, but the potential of the next step there would be how far that 20 mile per hour speed limit would extend, and that potentially would have been quite a large exercise to undertake that. But because there's not any accidents, or there's not a cluster of accidents now, which was the purpose for having that in the programme in the first place, we've suggested that location should be removed from the programme. As you'll see, there are quite a number of other locations, competing locations in that programme. Thank you.
Right. Members, I'll go before I go to the recommendation. I think I would agree with Ian that it's a good report. There's a lot of good stuff going out there, and there's a lot of challenges as well. But we'll try to address these as part of the committee. So, go to the recommendations. Can we note 2.1, note 2.2, agree 2.3, agree 2.4, note 2.5, note 2.6, note 2.7. The funding for Lockerbie Station, there was a question asked about how much it actually is, so...
Yes, just to come back to that, Chair. The figures are still being worked on. Really what I'm asking the committee is just to note that we will be coming back. We will come back with more detail on that. It will be contingent on the total cost, what Swiss Trans Board feel they can fund, and what we can possibly get from other sources through Network Rail. And we'll come back with the detail on that for committee. But just to flag up that it is an issue for us considering in setting the programme for next year.
Jim?
Just as long as at this stage we're not agreeing this spend before we actually know what it is, and I appreciate the language that's being used. I'm content with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we'll add in there is considerable will part of fund, and then a future report for the full costings comes back to this committee. Yeah.
Great, Chair.
2.9, approve the installation of 2 ladders and associated vendors. We approve that. And 2.10, agree to the inclusion of additional schemes in the speed limit and traffic calming. Agreed? Thank you very much, members. Moving on to report number 9, Economic Development Asset Class Capital Programme. This report advises members on progress of the Economic Development Asset Class Capital Programme. The Director and his management team will take any questions on this. Tommy? Sorry, unless you've got anything to add to it, Director.
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Tommy?
Right, thanks, Chair. Chair, we have been asked to note the progress on these items in this report. I'm afraid what I want to do is note the lack of progress that has been made with the East Pier on Stranraer and the whole Stranraer waterfront development. We were supposed to have a report before us today. I have been somewhat placated in that by speaking to yourself, Chair, and the Director. I know things are moving in our direction. I'm sure the Director will maybe point that out. But I've got to say the disappointment of the people of Stranraer as well. But, I mean, this is a major project for us for many years to come. But it's 10 years now in the making. I think we're going to move on.
You Directors.
Thank you, Chair. I can assure members and Councillor Sloan in particular that this remains a key project in our programme. At the moment, we have to complete the overwater and overland site investigation surveys, and they're highly specialist surveys, and over the summer it has taken a bit of time to get them in place. They are in place, and we'll be starting that work very soon. From these investigations will come the final piece of the jigsaw, which will make us understand what is the total market failure and what investment is needed to complete the scheme. And as far as timescale is concerned, that will very much mirror the budget process, both for ourselves as a council and for the Scottish Government in identifying funding that will be required to complete progress the scheme.
Okay, I mean, one of the issues we did ask at the last was to ask for the committee to actually go down to Stranraer Pier, and my understanding was diaries were a problem. I can't remember being asked to actually have a date in my diary, but as part of this ongoing process, the chair and vice chair of Wigtown Area Committee will get an updated email every month and a meeting with the director if that's appropriate to take that forward.
Chair, I'd be delighted to update the chair and vice chair of the Wigtown Area Committee, and if a meeting is preferred, I'd be delighted to do that.
Andrew?
Chair, I just want to echo exactly what Tommy said. It's been 6 years and there's been a lot of hype about the East Pier project, and I know when I was at high school there was a lot of hype, and there was a generation that was excited about the potential and the opportunity that was coming. 6 years on, there's nothing, and I would just like to see that hurried on a little bit.
Well, you've got the assurance that will be given an update on a monthly basis to the chair and vice chair of Wigtown Area Committee. Ian?
Just a brief one, Chairman, in regards to page 106, 3.2.6, just on high street improvements, wonder if we could have got a little bit more meat in the bone with that, Chairman. What does that mean? Just over 100k, I think, as well as the Chapel Cross stuff. What does that mean?
Jason?
We'll be undertaking a series of design workshops to look at how we can improve the appearance of Annan High Street, looking at the quality of the spaces, looking at how they can be improved, whether we can rationalise some of the street furniture that's along the high street. It'll be a public event. It will also include elected members. We're in the procurement process for that now. I'm looking to get that work underway sometime during October.
I'll remind members again, if it's a ward issue and you've had these papers for a week, can you ask officers by email or by telephone to get these answers? We have Jim Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. Although it's a ward issue, they feature in the paper, therefore you're absolutely entitled to ask the question. And the problem is, it's an echo chamber now, because I'm echoing what the Stranraer members are saying. I complained a year ago. I got a report saying that the Gateway projects would be completed by March 2017. I complained at that time that members hadn't been consulted, and I expected to be consulted and kept appraised of what's going on. It's now nearly 2018. I've heard nothing. Silence is maybe golden in some cases, but no in cases like this. These works are not being progressed. We've had one change of member of staff. I've met that member of staff once, maybe 6 or 9 months ago. And I do think that when you raise expectations, you have consultation exercises in the community, it needs to be complete, it needs to be ongoing. The public realm work are currently being consulted, but the Gateway projects, no. And why it didn't go hand in glove, I don't know, but absolutely nothing. And it was presented at the time as an easy win, and so it is. It's a sign that says welcome to Sankara, or welcome to Kirkconnell, or welcome to One Head. But it's gone nowhere in 2 years. We've set the resources aside. They're lying in a pond somewhere or in the ether, and like other members, progress, even if it's slow, is helpful, but absolutely no progress is no helpful. And all that happens is we get a kick in at community councils, and the council loses credibility, and it just shouldn't be happening.
Jason?
I can assure Councillor Dempster that the projects are actually being progressed. We've had several public consultation exercises during the summer. 2 weeks ago, we had a weekend consultation exercise held in the local community for the Gateway projects themselves. There have also been a number of member briefings around all of this work, which we intend to complete by the end of the financial year.
Jim,
absolutely not, Chairman. I have had no, and I want evidence of that. If Jason's saying that, I want to see it, because my email's broken. My phone's broken, and communication in and around the council isn't functioning. because I've had no briefings. The last time I met a member of staff would be 6-9 months ago, and that was around the public realm. I have had no briefing at any time, in any way, shape or form, on gateway projects in my ward. That's an absolute fact, or I wouldn't be saying it.
Director.
Okay, Chair, can I give members an assurance that we'll look at why Councillor Dempster has not been briefed, and we'll advise members accordingly.
Graham. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. It may be comfort to know that I'm not going to talk on ward issues here, but I can only back up what Tommy Sloan and Andrew Juste have just said, as well as Jim Dempster. But I was Wigney chair back in 2007, 2008, when the initial master plan was drawn up. We've got nice photos on the wall, nice pictures, nice drawings, but nothing has happened. We've still got a station that's half road to Ireland. It'd be easier to get out of Belfast than Stranraer, just about. Railway station I'm talking about. And we need to be moving this forward. Now, I've actually arranged a meeting this afternoon with Jason Sayers after this conclusion of this meeting to try and discuss some of these matters. As regards the Upper Nithsdale one, there was a charrette held in 2015. This is now nearly 2018. We need to be moving forward here. You know, things are not progressing quickly enough.
If you'd heard Jason earlier on, he said in the last 6 weeks there's been consultations within the upper Nithsdale area and that, and that's going to be moving forward. And you're meeting Jason later on. Thank you very much for that. I just wish it was before, but there you go. You might have got your answers in that, like, you know. You want to add anything to that, Director?
Yes, I'm hearing these messages loud and clear, and I can assure members we'll look at our delivery programme.
Jeff?
I'm not going to be parochial in terms of ward issues because the Dumfries High Street isn't in my ward, but I do get flack at community councils. It seems to be this paragraph 3.2.5 seems very much a cut and paste paragraph because it doesn't seem to move on. There appears to be nearly £800,000 for the Dumfries High Street public realm just sitting there unspent. We're told the project is currently on programme. What is the programme? What is the timescale associated with this? Because we don't have any definite dates as to when we're actually going to see action happening in the High Street. And you know, this is the High Street for the entire town of Dumfries, so it affects everyone, Heath Hall, Lockerbriggs, etc. It is looking very run down. The fountain hasn't been used, as far as I'm aware, all the way through this summer. It doesn't give a good impression. So can we have some more information about what timescales associated with in terms of actually getting work on the ground?
Jason?
We're currently undertaking a review of Dumfries Town Centre on the back of a range of projects which have been coming forward from a variety of different groups. I think that there's a group working on the Rosefield Mill. There's also a group working around the what's locally been termed as the mid-steeple quarter. And the review is trying to coordinate all of that so that we can bring together a list of priorities that we can then, I think, look towards maximising leverage in from Scottish Government funding by utilising a coherent strategy for how we prioritise projects within the town centre itself. There's a lot of work to be done, and I quite agree around the decline of the material. Ironside Farrer, who we commissioned to undertake the review, are looking at all of that. So we're looking to bring in a range of different strands to take the best out of what we have in terms of the biggest priorities, and certainly Queensberry Square, the area around the fountain, English Street, the mid-steeple, and Rosefield Mills will all be part of that mix.
Before I go on to Ian and Jim, to Jeff, sorry.
But we still haven't got a timescale for when this is actually going to happen, sometime in the future, which isn't particularly helpful.
Well, over the next 6 weeks, we're looking to conclude the review. I think out of that will come a series of priorities. Once we have the results of that, I will then report back to elected members on the progress of the work. Certainly looking to bid for Scottish Government funding on the back of the conclusions of the report, and that will be towards the end of this year.
Right, John?
As I say, I'm not going into it, but in a further report, it's actually got to be delayed, the public realm works. And if a report, exempt report that's coming later, it's actually telling you the public realm works has got to be delayed. It's got to be put back.
I think the point I'd like to make around the projects that we have within the economic development class are strategic, and they don't always necessarily fall within a financial reporting year. There are various complexities, various funding regimes that we're looking to maximise and leverage, and very often that means that we have to reprofile projects on the back of that in order to attract the relevant funding and get the right projects in the right places. I think what's perceived to be slippage is actually just a way of reprofiling the programme. The programme is strategic and it does span 3 years.
I think before I go on to Ian, it's becoming quite clear that members are not being communicated to with what's regards happening with these asset class capital programmes. I think an action plan from this is that we get an update of all of the asset class capital programmes to find out exactly where we are in each of the different areas across Dumfries and Galloway. We've had the issue with communication with the new equipment that we've had and all that sort of stuff, but that does not stop anybody printing off a letter and sending it to the elected members, finding out. So as part of the recommendation, I'll be looking for an action for members to be updated on all the asset capital plans. Yeah.
There's a number of, just for my own clarity, that it mentions there about Chorus and the one in Annan. Behind both of those, though, there is a vehicle for delivering that, which is a local group, you know, and I'm just wondering, is there similar groups in these regions? So is Jimmy sitting a group that is looking, because it's maybe the steering group, and that's where you would get the regular communication, because the projects are regularly communicated back through Chorus and Regeneration Steering Group in relation to Annan and the wider M74 corridor. So it's maybe the lack of maybe a vehicle, a local vehicle for reporting these through that is maybe one of the issues, and maybe something to be looked at.
Is there any other steering groups?
Chair, can I suggest that we come back to the next committee with a detailed report that explains how we're communicating and how we continue to communicate, and a report that gives clear timescales for members' information.
Yeah, we've got Ian first, then Jim, and then Malcolm. Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. It was on your point. I think it's perceived communication deficiency, you could say. I think I've seen an incredible difference since the ward worker/officer has been appointed. This type of stuff that's been missed here, I'm starting to pick it up now through that. I would absolutely agree that from my own perspective, because we've all got a workload, we can't go to everything. So this communication problem has certainly been starting to be addressed, and it's 90% there now through the ward officer, in my perspective. I don't know what it is. I mean, I know you've got a good one as well, but certainly, Chairman, that's certainly the way forward as far as I'm concerned.
Just the councillor that's raised that, though, I mean, he asked a question earlier on about a little bit more detail on Annan public realm. You were provided with that full specification.
Okay, Jim.
Just a daft statement more than a question, Chair. Although on page 109 it shows the allocated budget for the financial year, it doesn't show anywhere what the total budget allocated is. And I thought we got that routinely. It only rattled my cage because the Kirkconnell or Upper Nithsdale Enterprise Centre is 40k allocated to it, and the total budget's 400k. And initially I thought it was a printing error until I realised we're talking about one financial year only. But there's no indication of what the total amount committed to the project is. That's the point I'm making. I'm aware of it, but to keep other members up to date with what's happening.
Jason?
The total budget for Upper Nithsdale's not changed. It is as it was.
So you do know what it is?
I know what it is. It just doesn't.
I thought you said it was
no, I'm not challenging it. No, as I say, initially I thought it was a printing error, but then I realised it was a financial year they're talking about. But what I'm saying is, for members' information, fullness of information, the total project money or the total allocation should maybe feature in the same paper.
I think what Alistair suggested on that report coming back, giving us all the projects and all that, the total
that'll be fine.
Thing, that'll be included in that particular thing.
Fine.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the back of what Councillor Lever was saying, I've got slight concerns about this Ironside-Farrer consultation. You're told it's got 6 weeks to run, and I'm hearing, and this, unfortunately this is maybe slightly ward related, but I'm hearing from community councils that their consultation with them has been, to say the least, poor. Also, an awful lot of stakeholders within the town, namely retailers and private businesses, have not really been consulted on any of this, and if there's 6 weeks left to go, I would like a wee bit of assurance that the 6 weeks would be used to expand the consultation.
Jason?
I think the consultation that Ironside-Farrer have undertaken, we're assured, has been comprehensive. They've engaged with a variety of different businesses. It won't be all of them, but they've certainly engaged with a variety of them, and a couple of the community groups as well. There'll also be an opportunity to be involved with consultation as the work progresses. So this isn't a once and for all consultation process. As we get into the detail of the different projects that fall out of this work, there'll be further opportunities for people to be involved.
Okay, members, we've got the recommendations. Members asked to note the progress of the individual projects and overall progress being made across the project programme delivery, which is within budget and on programme. We'll have a second recommendation that a further report comes back for all projects at the November meeting.
Chair, should nobody note the lack of progress?
No.
Well, that gives justification for a second.
But it's a 3-year programme, Jim. All right.
Mine's been running in 3 years.
We agree the recommendation. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to kick his ass. Okay, members, we're going into item 10, which is Director End of Year Assessment of Business Plan Performance, Economy, Environment, Infrastructure. This is for the years 2016-17. This report advises members of the Director's assessment of the delivery outcomes for 2016-17 against the performance targets set in the EI business case. Director, have you got anything to add?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair, just to say that this is measured against our business plan targets. There are 14 areas in the KPIs that we have not met the target for various reasons. Some of the PIs themselves are not totally within our control, and there are 8 projects that we have not met the targets, and that's explained in the report. And I have my management team with me, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Can I ask, again, it's one that Jim does, the daft laddie question. If we can't control a target, what's it doing in our targets?
Well, so some of the PIs are there to give a flavour of the economy and to give members an indication of how the economy is progressing, and against that, it gives some context as to the other PIs and what we're achieving, and planning and building standards being a typical example of that.
I can understand that, but KPIs, key performance indicators, SMART targets, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic targets. If we can't control that, is that really a SMART target? I mean, I think we should talk offline and see where we can, do this type of thing. Members, it's open for any questions and chat. Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just on Appendix 1. I'll just list 3 things, Alistair, or whoever's answering these. In Appendix 1, number of unemployed adults over 25 supported into a positive destination. With a target of 300, we've managed 182. If you go 3 down, I think it is, number of young people under 25 accessing the Dumfries and Galloway Employability Awards, a target of 150, and we've managed 36. And if you go over to page 119. Implementation of active travel strategy started on the 1st of April 2015, due date on the 31st of March 2017, progress 50%. Could somebody please explain that to me? These three items I've highlighted.
Christian Douglas has come back again.
Thank you, Chair. The two targets under employability and skills, I refer you to the exception reports on page 138 and 139, which explains clearly that these projects were significantly delayed due to administrative issues around the release of European Social Fund monies. Should have been made available to us in April 2014, but we didn't actually get the money until the end of last year. Those of you who are familiar with how ESF works, this is not an uncommon problem, and these programs are now developing momentum and will be reprofiled to deliver their targets according to the original plans.
Douglas.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to the active travel strategy, we've also got an exception report in Appendix 2 relating to that. The initial strategy had 58 actions within it, which was perhaps slightly over-optimistic within a 2-year period. So we're suggesting that moves on for another 2 years to allow us to continue that. We are working our way through the majority of those, and the majority of actions are in progress. However, we have indicated that we are 50% of the way through. Active travel is one of those issues that requires, it's an ongoing activity, it's not, doesn't fit very easily within a project. So but we are suggesting that we continue that for further 2 years to tie off all the actions within the original strategy and bring back a refreshed action plan to a future meeting of this committee.
Could I just come back very briefly, Chair? I appreciate what you're saying and its lack of slowdown in funding opportunities, etc., and especially in the employability one. It's small comfort to the people who are trying to get jobs. And you know, we need to be doing something. Maybe if we come out of Europe, it might help, will it?
Maybe that's your opinion. Rog?
I note the lack of progress regarding the percentage of staff who've completed an annual performance development, the PDR. I just wonder, could we break down how many of these haven't been achieved by department? Because I think it would be interesting to know how much this is to do with capacity and when people have been taking early retirement or leaving, or we're not filling vacancies, how much that impacts on the ability of a service to complete the PDRs.
Yeah. Director?
Yes, Chair, we could certainly provide a breakdown within the service, not by department, but by service. We certainly have a large number of frontline staff, operational staff, etc., drivers of buses, of all our vehicles, and we can certainly give an idea of that. But this is something that I view as a disappointment. It's something that's very, very important. It's a communication between management, line management and staff. It affects morale, it affects training. We have to understand what staff require for training, and the PDRs give us that sort of information. So I can assure you that I will be asking my management team to improve this, very definitely.
Okay, Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in as far as, I mean, unlike the last report, I think with the amount of red indicators here, it draws your eyes automatically drawn to them, provided you want to say some positive things. But I just like Graham earlier, just a couple of things I'll pick up on. We're nearly 14 days sick. It's shown there's an exception report. I don't actually know if it's fit for purpose. But anyways, in regards to the improvement actions, but with targets 9, I think that needs to be addressed. It's a sign of the pressure. Even the small one like building warrants, we used to be the best in the UK when it came to that service delivery. Now we're below our local performance indicator. I think there's sheer signs of pressure on this department. It's through, it's obvious. It needs to be addressed, Chairman. I think your opening gambit at last month's committee was thanking the previous chair for all the hard work he's done, which is fair enough, but I think when we see this coming through, you've got a big workload in front of you, Chairman, to try and bring this into order.
You don't need to tell me about my workload, I already know that. But Director, about the targets.
Yeah, the targets I think are fair. I think they're smart, and certainly in the building warrants we've had issues with a new back office system that we've installed, but we're working hard to solve that. Yes, we have to keep working away and address any deficiencies to meet these targets. Again, we're doing that, and hopefully in the next report, the 6-month report for this current year, members will see that difference.
Okay, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously it needs to be mentioned, really, I think, in terms of the number of days lost. And I notice in both cases it's to do with mental and behavioural disorders rather than what you might first suspect, which would be musculoskeletal. So along with that, there's the health and safety plans, which are again another target that are not being met, and there's an exception report for that. I'm just wondering, it sounds like they could all be connected, given that we've got this, maybe it represents an essence of a culture we're maybe trying to change in terms of the health and safety in our workplace, and then the health and safety of staff who, for non-musculoskeletal reasons, are having difficulty returning to work. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of synergies there, or a way we can look at that holistically, or if indeed that's happening, and how we're actually progressing against these targets. The second thing is the derelict building strategy, which may be of interest to some members, but on page 151 there's an exception report there. Now this has already had a due date put back from 2015, 31st of March to 31st of March 2017, which obviously we're past that now. And then there's an improvement action to put that back to March 2018. I'm not sure if that's an improvement, but clearly every member in this room will have identified properties in their area, and it's not to be parochial, obviously, but this is a region-wide issue, and yet here's something that's put in place to actually help address this, and it's just not being able to do that. So can we get some assurance in terms of what action's been taken to progress that? Thank you.
Director.
Yeah. On the first points Councillor Thompson makes regarding health and safety and absenteeism, I don't think the two are particularly connected. The red for the health and safety is a failure for us to complete our service plans for health and safety. The rest of the health and safety targets have been met. I meet once a month with health and safety reps from the corporate centre. We have health and safety on all our agendas for our management team meetings, both at the senior level and at team level. And we're doing everything possible to keep our health and safety up to date. It's absolutely important that we do. It's very critical that we have our health and safety processes absolutely perfect. In general, we do, but in this particular case, these plans have not been populated and completed. Again, when we come to the 6-monthly report for this current year, members will see an improvement on that, because that's something we've been working very hard at. Now, in talking about that first question, could you just remind me what the second one was again? Yeah, the derelict property, yeah. I can give members assurances that we're looking at this more holistically. There is no doubt that some of these derelict properties are of a residential nature, and we do have an empty homes officer in communities, and I'm working with the Director of Communities to put forward an action plan so we can address this issue more holistically within the Council.
Jim Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. I wish Stephen hadn't raised that, because you might bet.
So do you, because I knew what was coming.
I have a question though. My memory, if it serves me correctly, we set £100,000 aside to deal with the derelict property issue in these 4 locations. And yet at communities, last week, we agreed to spend £6,000 on one of the 4 properties. And my question then was why, and it was going to be referred to Alistair, I presume, because we have already identified funds for dealing with that. The other question, and I think it's an important one, and I don't expect an answer today, but I would like an answer from some member of staff, whether it be legal or indeed Alistair, on what basis can we move forward to compulsory purchase? Because we are sometimes spending a significant amount of public money maintaining properties. We know who the owners are. We've gone through the process of notifying the owners about the circumstances the property sits in and the impact on health and safety implications, danger implications, and we should not be spending huge amounts of public money to help absentee landlords just sit and pretend they don't have a responsibility or a duty. And I'd be anxious to know how we can engage in compulsory purchase to take these properties and either sell them in the open market to get our money back, or, as Alistair quite rightly said, in some of the cases, or whichever officer it was, some of the cases they're domestic and they could be brought back into use because we have an issue about the empty homes anyway. But I'm happy to take that offline, but I think our members would be interested, and I'd like to know on what basis and how frequently we progress compulsory purchase, because it was so helpful in a number of cases, but most specifically because we're sitting with cut budgets and we're throwing money away that we should not be throwing away, where the responsibility absolutely lies elsewhere, and the individuals are well aware of their responsibilities because we've told them.
I would like an answer, but I would also like to understand what a short question is for you.
Well, Chair, Councillor Dempster raises a whole series of complex issues there. The Council isn't spending money in other people's properties. We're, as officers, not delegated to spend money in other people's properties. Where a property is dangerous, we deal with that through building standards. But most of these properties are derelict. They're not necessarily dangerous. One of the great issues that we've had is the law, and how do we get action when we can't trace owners? We have no right to touch a property that we don't have permission to do so. And in the case of the Kirkconnell project, that's legislation that the strategic housing have been able to use to take that forward, and that's absolutely appropriate, and that's why we must look at it more holistically. Compulsory purchase of buildings, the Council is looking at its estate to diminish its estate, not necessarily purchase other people's responsibilities, and that's the great issue here. People have got to take responsibility for their own actions and deal with their own property, and it's to try and encourage people to do that.
I haven't heard about the £6,000, but my point is...
But that was a communities thing.
Aye.
You wouldn't expect Alistair to, unless he was at communities.
But the other point is, these properties are sitting in the main street with slates flying off every night. There's a huge health and safety issue, which is why we're addressing it through communities. But I don't think these people should be left just to pretend they don't have a responsibility. And we know who some of them are because we're communicating with them.
If there's any health and safety issues with buildings, building standards are dealing with it. Slates aren't flying through the air. And people being hurt. Let's just be careful what we're saying here, and we address each issue as it manifests itself. On the budgeting issue you've requested, you've inquired about, EEI have transferred money to communities to deal with it.
Okay, Jim, and then I'll go into recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at Appendix 2, page 134, the old chestnut again of waste collection. I note it says less waste has been recycled than expected. And the improvement action, complete development of the Council's waste management plan. Well, my question quite simply is, what is the time scale for completion of this plan?
Alistair.
Yeah, this is another area of challenge, and the targets that we set for this recycling were based on our plans to roll out curbside recycling, which certainly has taken place in Wigton, but not across the rest of the region. Regarding the timescales, there will be a detailed report coming to members in November, which will set out our position as far as that development is concerned, and it will give timescales.
Jim, do you want to come out?
And just to thank the Director for his answer, and to point out there are actually two versions of waste collection in Wigtown area. Thank you.
I'm well aware of that, and the most efficient one will be rolled out, and members are still to receive an update report on that as well.
Okay, I'll go with Stephen and then John, and then I'm definitely going to the recommendations, but it looks like I'm going to have to book 2 days for the November's E&I committee.
Thanks for your indulgence, Chair. It's actually to do with, I was sort of scared to ask it really, but it's page 146. ICT, again here we have an exception report relating to the implementation of smart technology, which I'm sure a number of members here will have seen this report or have heard about this way back in 2015 and before. So again, we've got a due date that was passed. It was put back 2 years. We've passed that due date, and still, I mean, I'm sure every member can identify with IT-related issues in connection with maybe getting responses to their inquiries or automated responses from Total Mobile, or what even's happening with that. So it's really just to try and understand. And I'm sort of preparing myself for the type of answer I'm going to get, but I have to ask the question anyway. What we're doing about this, and when are we going to see proper progress?
Ronnie, how do you prepare yourself for an answer?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure what response Councillor Thompson's expecting, but we've tried to elaborate on how we're performing in the exemption report and to give some clarity and detail of where we have gone with the Total Mobile project. It continues to develop, it continues to meet key points within the development and rollout, and we're working with our colleagues in BTS who are helping and supporting us to bring this forward. I think I could spend a lot of time going through each element of the Total Mobile system, how it works. I think perhaps I'm more than happy to, if it was through the chair, if a separate viewing of what Total Mobile can do. We've already rolled this out to the director and to the senior leadership team to show them the benefits and the access that Total will provide us. What development opportunities are currently going through with the inspectors in relation to what they're doing out on the ground now. So I think I could go through each point, but I think it'd be probably more useful to members, and I'd welcome them if they would like to see the system of where we currently are, and we'll happily lay that on at Carrigan Tower. We can show them from end to end, and hopefully that would give greater clarity on the whole process.
Okay, John?
Just a small point, Chair. Page 127 and 129, we've got reports on the number of days lost through absence. And I know it's a new performance indicator, and I've read the exemption reports. I just wanted to know if the trend generally over the past 3 years was an upward one or a downward one. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Over the last 3 years for EEI, it's been an upward trend.
An upward?
Upward, yes.
Okay, members, we're going to do the recommendations. Members are asked to 2.1 review the end of the year summary. We've reviewed that. Scrutinise the exception report, we agree that. And 2.3, agree the proposed amendments to the performance information for economy and environment infrastructure 2016-18 business plan as detailed in Appendix 3. And as an action point, if members are interested in seeing the Total Mobile, if they would get contact with Ronnie Dempster at Garrick, and that will be organised. Yes? Okay. Item 11, in developing Dumfries and Galloway Council Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Change Strategy. This report requests members to agree the project plan is set out in Appendix 2 to develop a sustainable development, environment and climate change strategy 2018 to 2032 for future member approval. The report also asks members to note and agree the content of the corporate response to the Scottish Government's consultation on climate change bill as set out in Appendix 1 to the report. The Director and Simon and Chris Woodgie's here to take any questions from members. Anything to add, Director?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Members? Andrew?
Thank you, Chairman. I actually quite like this report. I like the fact that we're going to be welcoming environment and climate change strategies to DG Council. However, will we be incorporating this into our local development plan, which is also up for renewal and planning, to make, to develop and progress buildings in a environmentally safe and sympathetic manner?
Thank you, Chair. Through yourself. Yeah, the idea obviously is to have a longer term plan and to build in with all of the existing council strategies and documents to ensure that climate change, sustainability and obviously the environment is embedded at the heart of the future plans for the council. The local development plan team will be involved in developing this particular strategy, and whilst it might not appear in the current local development strategy, it will definitely appear in future local development strategies.
Jim?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 163, at the top there, increasing the target to 90% greenhouse gas emission reduction. How realistic is that for Dumfries and Galloway, given the very large cattle population in our region? These cattle do produce an awful lot of methane.
There's something I could say there, Jim, which I'm not going to. Simon.
Aye, thank you, Chair. Through yourself. Obviously, all targets when we're looking at a 90% reduction are going to prove challenging. And what we're focusing on here is obviously the impact that we have control over. So obviously we are very, very confident that we will be working very hard to ensure that we can achieve those, and obviously working with others across the different sectors and industries to see how we can control some emissions, but obviously some might not be able to be controlled.
Okay. No members, can we go to the recommendations and members to note and agree the content of the corporate response to the Scottish Government consultation on climate change bill as set out in Appendix 1, and 2.2 agree the project plan as set out in Appendix 2 to develop a sustainable development, environment and climate change strategy 2018-2032 for future approval by appropriate council committee. Members, I'm going to take one more and then I'm going to break for lunch, which is the Dumfries and Galloway Core Pass 378 BLADNOCH. Members will recall that this item was deferred at this committee on 20th of June to allow further discussions with stakeholders to take place. Following this further consultation, this report now advises the outcomes of those consultations and the issues surrounding access on the Core Path 378 at BLADNOCH. The report provides proposal on the future of route for members to consider. The Director and Simon are here to take any questions, unless you've got anything to add, Director.
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Members? Jim?
Very briefly, Chair, 3.26. It states there that the private cottage and gardens were not utilised. That, to my knowledge, is incorrect. The previous owner did indeed make use of the house from time to time.
So it was limited use rather as...
It was limited use, yes.
Okay. But we'll change that in the report. Is there any... Well, so can we agree the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 and 2.9? Great. Okay. Members, we're going to have a breakdown, say, back at Environmental Health Food Law Enforcement Service Delivery Plan 2017-18. And this report requires members to consider two matters. First of all, to review the Food Law Enforcement Service Delivery Plan for 2015-16, which is Appendix 2, And secondly, to approve the Food Law Enforcement Service Delivery Plan 2017-18, which is Appendix 1. The Head of Planning and Regulatory Services and Environmental Health Manager will take any questions on the report. Director, have you got anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair, thank you.
Steve, anything? Okay, members? I think this is a good report going forward, and I think we should support. If there are no questions, I'll just go straight to the recommendations. 2.1, we've asked to approve the Food Law Enforcement Service Delivery Plan for 2017-18, and 2.2, to review the Food Law Enforcement Service Delivery Plan 2015-16. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 14 then, Environmental Health Annual Report. This report requires members to consider the draft Environmental Health Report 2016-17 prior to its publications. Members will remember that we're trying to get all of the departments within E&I to come forward with reports. And I think this itself is an actually good report. It gives an idea of what the Environmental Health Group actually does within the Council. Head of Planning Service and the Environmental Health Manager will take any questions on the report. Director, you got anything to add to it?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair, thank you.
Steve? Members? Ros?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment on the strategy for dealing with goals in Dumfries, which has obviously had some success. And I'm wondering if there's possibility of discussing a strategy for the west of the region.
Steve?
Chair, thank you. As members may be aware, the goal project for Dumfries has been running for a number of years now. Each year we receive a report on how successful or otherwise that project has been, and we bring that report to this committee, to EEI committee. The last report that we brought was early last year, and once we received the report on activities for 2016-17, the intention is to bring something forward to EEI in early 2018, and that will assess all of the strategic options for the Dumfries project going forward, and it will also give members the opportunity to look at region-wide issues. What I would say is that at the present time, the funding exists only to allow us to deliver that project within Dumfries town centre and the immediate vicinity. This was a special initiative that originated from the Nithsdale Area Committee many years ago, and has therefore has a special budget allocation within our revenue budget to allow us to basically employ a contractor to do the egg and nest removal programme, which has been pretty successful. But certainly we'll bring a report back early in the new year, Chair, that will allow these broader issues to be raised.
Okay, happy with that, Ros? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Unbelievably, it's the same in the north of the region. And what happens, of course, is seagulls come inland to nest, and then they gravitate back to the coast, and therefore the situation is exacerbated because of the lack of attempt at dealing with the eggs at source. So I'd be pleased to see a region wide, and I'm happy to feed into Steve. There is a particular issue in my ward, and I'm sure it's no unique, but it's something that definitely needs addressing, and it would be beneficial, because if you deal with the reproduction, then you reduce the amount of pests.
Well, I'm sure all members would be, interested in that report coming early in the new year and input into it, Steve. So look forward to that. Graham?
Thanks, Chair. Does this budget for the goal scheme, has it got a limited lifespan? Is there a cut-off point for it?
Chair, no, the budget itself doesn't have a limited lifespan. What has a limited lifespan is the existing contractual arrangement that we have with the contractor who carries out the actual nest and egg removal programme for us. I think that was a 3-year programme, Greg, which expires next year.
Next nesting season. After next nesting season.
Yeah, that's it. There was a 3-year project, and next year will be the third of those years.
Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, we IT issue there. Just on page 228 of 424, it's to do with the air quality management and monitoring. So a couple of questions really around this, but I noticed that one of the points was there was a monitor at CAIRNRYAN indicating the results didn't meet the air quality objectives, and it would be necessary to carry out a more detailed assessment using a more sophisticated monitoring device. Does this mean that we need to update our monitoring devices, or we just need to get more information and more detail, and that initial warning has made us say, let's look at this further, and then what kind of action do we take on the back of that, given whatever results come back? Similarly, some of the reasons for citing the non-automatic monitoring sites is obviously to do with roads, but we've got now like sort of biomass centres, etc., and places that are burning or producing a lot of pollutant potentially. How do we ensure we're getting those monitored as well, or do we, and it's just not explicitly referenced in here? Thank you.
Greg?
In answer to your first point, we are looking for funding from Scottish Government for a new monitor, which we're going to rent for a sum of £18,000. We'll get the majority of the funding for that from Scottish Government, and we'll site that down at CAIRNRYAN, and that will give us a much better picture of what the air quality is down there, because the previous monitor was not accurate enough to give us a true reflection down there, so we are going to learn a wee bit more about down there. In relation to the sites, when we are locating the non-automatic sites, we're looking at where there is also an impact on populations. So really, if there's going to be any development next to the biomass site, that might then make that a possible monitoring site under those circumstances. And we're basically looking at the strategic siting of these things in accordance with the current guidance.
David?
Thank you, Chair. Back to the gulls. Like most species of bird, their gulls are in decline. Obviously, we don't want them in the town, it looks like here. So I just wondered whether this scheme has any complementary aspect to it, where we look at where gulls should go, and we try and make conditions optimal for them there, or whether it's just a one-sided thing that we're killing them in the town.
Right.
Basically, the gull project looked at problems with aggressive behaviour within the Dumfries town centre area, and that's what it deals with.
Okay, thank you. Members, can we go to the recommendations? Members are asked to consider the draft Environment Health Annual Report 2016-17 and agree to its publication. Agreed? Thank you. We're on to item 15 now, which is the Trading Standards Annual Report. This report requires members to consider the draft Trading Standards Annual Report 2016-17 as detailed in the appendix, and members are asked to agree that the report illustrates an effective and resilient service in the face of the National Strategic Review. The Head of Planning, Regulatory Services and Trading Standing Manager will take any questions to the report. Director, have you got anything to add to it?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Steve?
Nothing, Chair.
Sandra? Okay, thank you. Again, members, this is a draft Trading Standards report. Any questions? Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. It's actually just on the back of something where Trading Standards featured, and it was to do with the sheep race cancellation in Moffat. Now, I know that's getting parochial, but I think there's a wider thing here to do with how we manage the register. Or have sight of the register. I appreciate it's not a licensing thing, there's an actual register under the Act. for performing animals, I think it is, or entertainment. So it's not really sort of highlighted in here, although it does sort of outline your activities at agricultural shows, etc. But given that we've now had the spotlight shone on that aspect of things, could you maybe give us a reassurance in terms of how well we know what our animal activities groups are doing, if you like, insofar as they're registered correctly? And I know we did try and provide support for that particular event, but maybe a wee update on that would be sort of helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Sandra.
Well, the reason there's no mention of that legislation in this annual report is because we didn't register any events during that year. We have 4 events currently on the public register. We don't publish it as such, but we allow people to have sight of it should they wish to see it. It is, as you've pointed out, legislation. It's 1925 legislation. It's been around for a while, and the duty has been there. Sometimes because it's not really, well, because it's not modern legislation, sometimes doesn't fit the modern environment, and it is sometimes difficult to tell what should apply and what shouldn't. But in light of what happened with Moffat, we have been seeking guidance and assurances as to what we would be included and what the process might be during any further application for registration. But as you pointed out, it is just a duty to register. It's not a licence, and it's a one-off registration. So had they registered at the outset, that same registration would still have applied, and there would be no other further fee to pay.
Welcome back.
Yeah, just quickly. No, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I'm just thinking, I mean, this section of reporting in the actual agenda today is actually really welcome, because it does, as the chair said, provide quite a lot of information about what we do, which is very helpful, and it's directly impacting on the public. But the public register you're saying there is public, but it's not available publicly unless by request. I'm just wondering if we're getting an annual report like this, it might be helpful to include that aspect in terms of that register, given it's something we would have sight of and support groups in directing towards that in terms of registration. Because, you know, if we do it, then it's helpful to know that we do that, and also that people can find out about such things should they need to, so we're not caught out again, basically. Thank you.
We are reviewing our whole licensing process currently, and whilst we might not get it all done this year, I would be looking at how other authorities publish that information. I did look to see if any actually had it online, because there would be no reason, but I think there's very few registrations actually done on a year-to-year basis, and therefore that whole process has quite a low profile. But if there was a way of us publishing it on the website and just having it there, whilst there's a fee could be applied to let people see, the Act does provide for that. I would see no reason why we couldn't look at just putting it on the website. There are only 4 people there, but we would have to bear in mind how that information was published and the use that might be made of it by other people. So we would need to be careful.
David and then John.
Thank you, Chair. Page 235, item 322, Trusting Trader Scheme. It attracted £1.6 million worth of new business to its members in 2016-17. How do you quantify that?
This information is taken from the feedback that's provided online. We work the whole process through a company called Reference Line, and they do that for us. So when a customer gives feedback, they put a value of that feedback on there. So this is taken just from the feedback that's been posted on the site since it started, the 2.6 since the start and the 1.6 million last year. So we're confident there's at least that amount. However, there are probably other jobs that have been done that haven't had feedback, so it's probably higher than that.
Thank you, Chair. I personally found these reports, environmental health and the trading standards, extremely informative and very useful, and I just wondered what plans the authors had to circulate these reports throughout the region, how many copies will be printed and who will get to see them.
Good idea. Yeah.
This is the first annual report that I have done. It did take quite a while to compile, but should be simpler next year. And if there is interest and an appetite for that, then the more people who can see it, the better. As far as I can see, it will be available obviously online as a result of the papers today being public, but we can have some printed, and I'm sure we could put it on the website as well.
I wonder then if it's potentially have some printed off for all the libraries where people may go and actually read it and see that. Yep. Anybody else? I really like the case studies side of things, and you can see where the environment health actually proved trading standards have actually improved people's lives with what they actually do. So thank you and your team for what you do. Members, can we go to the recommendations? We're asked to consider the draft trading standards annual report 2016-17 detailed, and agree the report illustrates an effective and resilient service in the face of the National Strategic Review. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Sean?
Sorry, but just on that last point that you made as well, obviously to kind of publish them this year would be a cost, but I think it would be good if the last 3 reports, if they were put on the respective pages in the website so that people could access them. That might be the starting point, maybe look at it for next year for maybe some sort of publications. But
maybe happy to do that, Steve.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, I should have said it's our intention to publish these annual reports on the website in the same way that we do with the planning annual report, and we also have a building standards annual report. So that this now means we've got annual performance reports covering all 4 of the services, and they'll all be put on the website, and also that they will be printed, published and printed, because we can do that really quite cheaply these days and distributed.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and well done to your team. Item 16 has been deferred. Item 17, the enforcement partnership with the SSPCA at CAIRNRYAN port update. Members of this committee agreed to a partnership between the Council and the Scottish SPCA in November 2016. The purpose of this report today is to update members on that partnership project, which was set up to tackle illicit puppy trading. The project has recently been awarded a COSLA Bronze Award in 2017. The Head of Planning, Regulatory Service and Trading Standard Manager will take any questions unless you've anything to add to it.
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Steve? No. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. This is quite a big thing in the hearts of Wigtonshire, and I would like that a report be brought maybe every 6 months, maybe every quarter to the Wigton Area Committee, as it is something that's quite dear to me and Stranraer and probably throughout Wigtonshire. I think it would be good for the public to see what we're actually doing.
I take it that a report like that would be for noting it in area committee after here.
Yeah,
I think it's a good news story, and I think if we share that, it shouldn't be a big problem for you to do. Is that okay?
That would be fine. Yeah, I could put together a report.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm sure we'll get that sorted. Okay. So, any other questions, members? So we look at the recommendations. Members are asked to note the outcomes from Council's partnership with the Scottish SPCA in 2016-17. 2.2, agree that the project should continue for a further 12 months as detailed in paragraph 3.3. And 2.3, note the additional measures being explored by Trading Standard Service to tackle the illicit puppy trade as detailed in section 3.4. Agreed? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, members, on to report 18, the approval of winter service operations plan policy. This report provides members with a copy of the policy document for the winter service operations plan and asks members to confirm the approval of the plan as well as agree to a further report in 2018. There is no change from the previous winter service operations plan, but we do have to report back to members that will be the case. Head of Infrastructure, Transport and Infrastructure Manager and Roads Construction Manager will take any questions on the report. You got anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Sean?
Yeah, as I said, there's a lot of work done in this in the original plan, so it's a good plan, and I think the importance of this is to make sure we can communicate this as widely as possible, and it's maybe, I don't know if it's done, but maybe proactively send a copy to each of the community councils who are sometimes the frontline resilience teams in those communities. I don't know if that's done at the moment or whether or not that could be done. We've got a list of the community councils so we could send them a copy each once it's been agreed.
Stephen?
There could be some cost involved in that. I wonder if we put a copy of the plan in CD and provide it for the ward officers, if that might be a way to help disseminate the information. We used to put the plan on the website, but there's a kind of slimming down of the website. The full plan's not there, but there are kind of limited details on the website, plus all the mappings on the website. But certainly we're open to suggestions in terms of distribution, but possibly through ward officers, just to keep the numbers of CDs down.
All I was looking for was a PDF copy of this report, or the plan, so not a glossy document or anything, just so that it can be distributed to all the community councils. And probably your idea about through the ward worker would be the best way to do that.
I'll take.
Thanks for that, Chairman. Could you just elaborate a little bit on page 27838 in relation to minimising the depots you're going to be running these vehicles out of, and what depots are we going to be looking at not running them out of, and how is that going to be cost effective, and is there any proposed savings in relation to these larger vehicles?
Mike?
Thanks for that, Chair. I think it's important to emphasise at this stage that this is very much in a draft proposal. We've been looking at the use of new technology in relation to new salt, also how we record the information that actually comes out of the gritters when they're actually in operation. So I think the whole emphasis about looking at efficiencies, we've got 5 strategic depots across the region, and at this particular stage in time, we've not got any definitive answer which depots are going to be the main depots or how it impacts on depots.
So I take it from that when the report comes next year, that information will actually be in there when, if you are in fact intending to look at where you store these vehicles and that type of thing. Because Doug's absolutely right. It's something that we as members would need to have a look at and make the recommendations on. So if it comes back next year, Doug, there's going to be no change for a year anyway on this one. But when the recommendations come forward, you'll be able to do your input into that. Okay. Jim, and then Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of observations. One is about the Community Winter Resilience Scheme on page 279, and we're talking about discontinuing it. It seems to me that it's been a success story. Therefore, if it's exhausted itself in terms of who's actually looking for the equipment, then that'll be proven if we make the equipment available and folk don't actually request it. It seems to me to be somewhat presumptuous to just assume that everybody's got what they need and we'll just stop it. But I'll leave that because the report will come back at a later date. I presume unless we're deciding to stop it today.
I think what you'll find, Jim, is that the full utilisation of that actual budget that was put aside for that's now spent. So that there is no more further budgets for that.
No, but it's being suggested it's no needed, and that's something that we might want to consider in the budget setting process. But no, if we decide today that we're just going to discontinue it because it's obviously been a success. But anyway, having said that, I'm concerned about 3.8 because at the bottom end, that's on page 278, in the bottom end of the paragraph, it says 8-wheel 12 cubic metre vehicles are not suitable for all routes, but through earlier deployment and respective forecasts requiring a treatment allow the routes to be serviced. Well, I don't see how that can be because the big vehicle can't get in a small road at boy, and how soon you identify the issue. And I think there's a wider issue. Up until a few years ago, we used to have fully loaded vehicles sitting in council depots across the region for a quick response in terms of heavy snow in specific areas. As it is, if there's a fall in the north, we'll have to wait an hour before we see a vehicle because the nearest location, according to this report, will be Dumfries. And it also seems bizarre that we spend an hour driving, using up fuel and creating carbon emissions to get to settlements, because the A76 is treated by us under contract to Transport Scotland, and we can use their vehicles for road treatment. If we have to send another vehicle, and it seems to me we're no strategically thinking about how to save money, be more effective, be more responsive, and save emissions, etc. in the environment. We're just simply deciding on 3 large depots and be done with it. And that's something that I hope might be discussed in greater detail before this is endorsed.
Well, this is the same winter resilience plan that happened in 2012, Jim. There's going to be no change to it, but the new resilience plan is going to come back next year once everything's been tested. We've got this new IT equipment. Okay, we know how good IT equipment is, but certainly looking at the IT equipment within the roads department, it's been far improved compared to what we used to have, which was basically checking on cameras out in the roads, which never gave you a fair result. I think what you're saying is something that should come back next year. This is no change to the winter service operations policy as it is. Director, are you wanting to say anything?
Yeah, the Chair's absolutely right. This is our plan that members previously agreed, and we had great discussion about that loaded vehicle at the time, and the agreement and the approval by members is the plan you see in front of you today.
I know, and what I'm saying is it's not fit for purpose today, and that's evidenced by only learning because of the plan that's currently operational that it's no best suited to serve the communities.
I think I'd have to say it is fit for purpose. We wouldn't be putting a plan forward if it wasn't. And it's fit for purpose in the fact that members have looked at it. We did a lot of consultation on it, a lot of route planning, and members approved that after, I think, we had seminars and workshops as well to talk it through. And members had every opportunity to make changes at that time. However, we can always revisit that at a future time. But I wouldn't like to think, as director, I had a winter plan that was not fit for purpose. I believe it is.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well agreed, Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was actually to do with local providers who would come in to maybe do more sort of smaller towns and villages in terms of pavements, where maybe a large machine wouldn't be suitable. Obviously, footways and pedestrians is an issue during this time, and if footways aren't salted, that's obviously a sort of health and safety issue for people just going about their business. So I was just kind of wondering more to raise the question about community choices or participatory budgeting and helping to shape how maybe local contractors may be used in certain community settings because they feel that's a very local priority for their maybe non-strategic footpaths as far as we're concerned, but very important linking paths where they're concerned. And I'm just wondering what flexibility there'll be in the plan to allow for that flexibility at sort of micro level, if you like, in terms of helping shape in the very local delivery of service.
Stephen?
The plan itself has quite a lot of detail. As Alistair was saying, as the director was saying, there was a lot of work done with members, and it was actually a process of over 2 years that we reviewed the primary and secondary and then the footway routes with 6 reports to full council. So there's a lot of work done then on the footways and the prioritisation. So the plan itself and the mapping shows what the kind of 3 categories of footway are and what the treatments are for each of those footways. It's certainly what's before members just now is not looking at reviewing that at this time, and it's something that we're continuing to run with in terms of what was previously agreed with members. In terms of communities, and I'm just trying to understand the question, are you suggesting that communities would influence which treatment, which routes, which footways were treated, or that communities may treat footways?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just sort of looking in particular, maybe page 8 of the report, or page 292, where it's talking about hired services, particularly in relation to hiring services from the farming community and contractors to supplement the winter service in appropriate areas. Now, obviously, that's at a very local level, and a farmer in North Annandale isn't necessarily going to treat a footpath in Wigton. So there's an element of localism there that I think we're sort of recognising. But equally, at that level, I think there's maybe more opportunity for more community input into, well, actually, at that level, this is where you could maybe supplement the regime so that we're actually getting the footways we need treated. And obviously there's a few new members on this iteration of the council who haven't had a chance to have their input in that lengthy process previously. So I think it would be only fair, given the light of change in climate and all the rest of it, that newer members get that chance during the course of this council as well to have that input.
I think in terms of using local contractors, that's very much a kind of decision on the ground and in the areas about who's available, who has the right equipment, and who's kind of safe to provide that service. If there are other groups in the community that want to put themselves forward as a contracting support, I would imagine that's something that could be considered. It's certainly not the scope of the plan to widen that out in terms of increasing the length of the footway treatment routes.
Sean, then Jim.
Yeah, page 279, 310 and 311. I think one important point to note, and we probably need to communicate this as well, is that up until last year we were able to accommodate requests, valid requests for new salt bins in strategic locations in communities. And we're now at saturation point, so I think it's more about how we actually manage the bins that are in place, and maybe, rather than actually, well, we can't provide new ones now. What I found helpful though, and I've just wanted to, it confirmed, I found it helpful that they're electronically mapped in all the communities. So when people ask for one, I advised them to go on there, and as long as there was one within 250 metres, then the obligation had been fulfilled. So it's just to confirm that's still in position, particularly now that we can't actually issue any more salt bins.
Is that the position?
Yes, Sean, that is correct. And the website, the links are in the report too, shows the different treatment routes, so primary and secondary carriageway routes, and footway routes F1 to F3, but also shows the location of all the bins that are available in the area. I think, as the report says, that we've obviously put out quite a number of bins under community winter resilience, and we have no problem with doing that. If we're identifying bins over the winter that aren't being used, we accept if it's not a heavy snow or not a cold winter, they're not being used. But if there's ones that aren't being used, then we may look to bring those back in and relocate them elsewhere if there was other demand.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Can you confirm that there is definitely no successor scheme to the community winter resilience?
Can I answer that? There isn't at the moment, and that was a budget setting thing, but there's no harm in groups coming forward with that suggestion in their budget proposals for the future. But that specific thing was a budget setting issue from the administration at the time. So it's potentially one that can come forward for the budget setting process this year. Yeah. Okay, David.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on treatment priorities. Are the treatment priorities ever published to let the public know what the treatment priorities are?
James?
Sorry, can I just clarify that? Do you mean how we determine which routes are treated, or the actual routes that are how we worked out which routes are treated? Or how?
Well, no, you've got a priority list. What's priority 1, priority 2, and the same for footpaths. So letting the public know, where they live, whether it's going to be a priority 1, priority 2.
Yeah. Yes, the website shows the routes that receive what's called a primary treatment, which is ahead of a bad, identified bad weather, and secondary treatment routes, which are reactive routes. So they are done when there's capacity to undertake secondary treatment routes. So yeah, they're both identified on the website. So you can just go on to the winter page, and locate where you are or the route that you take to work, and determine it from that as to whether it's treated as a primary or secondary route or not at all. And the same with the footways. So F1 to F3 footways, depending on their level of importance, there's a description as to when they are treated. And furthermore, as you'll see in the report, there's also treatment routes to schools as well. From a treatment route to the school gate is agreed by during periods of inclement weather.
Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations? Members are asked to 2.1 agree the Winter Service Operations Plan 2017-18 Policy Operational Arrangement Schools and Footways as contained in Appendix 1. 2.2 note the primary carriageway route, treatment routes, secondary carriageway treatment routes and footway treatment routes as detailed in the web page, noting that they remain unchanged from those agreed by Council on 19th of January 2012. 2.3 agree to receive a further report in 2018 that will see roads treated remaining unchanged, but detailed changes to routes followed to enable efficiencies of reduced number of depots and larger capacity gritters. And 2.4 note the success of the Community Winter Resilience Scheme and that due to full utilisation of the budget, this scheme is no longer open for applications for equipment. Again, that could be done through your budget setting process. Yeah, is that agreed? Okay, item number 19 then, proposed restriction roads 20 mph limit, Scotland Bill consultation. This report is to provide members with the opportunity to consider the Council's response to a consultation on a proposal to replace the current 30 mph default speed limit with a 20 mph limit. Members are asked to approve the proposed Council response attached to Appendix 3 to this report. The Head of Infrastructure, Transportation and Service Manager Network Strategy will take any questions on this report. Director, you got anything to add to it?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair.
Stephen, anything? No. Members? Richard?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Mark Ruskell's report and hopefully bill going to the Parliament, I think it's got to be welcomed. I don't know which political party he's from, but whatever political persuasion you are, I think we're all very interested in the health and safety of our residents. Also, and I think local residents I've spoken to and the surveys I've done in the villages and towns suggest that people would welcome this with open arms. I think we should be persuaded by some of the arguments, the experiences of other areas like Edinburgh and Fife. The Fife one talks about reduction in accidents, well, minor and more dangerous ones, reductions in speed, more use of cycling, and less people driving to school. So if we could replicate that across Scotland, then I think that would be an extremely good thing. Looking at we're asked to approve the response to the consultation. I think the only one I would take serious exception to is page 346. And it says, Section 2, your rate views on the proposal. Which of the following best express your view of the proposal? We're going to be partially supportive, but I think we should embrace the proposal and be fully supportive. I think we want to be one of the authorities given back into the bill. I know there'll be obviously repercussions for the council, its budgets. We've answered the question what about the cost. It says we're saying it's going to be a significant increase in costs to the council. Yeah, well, I suppose any increase in cost is significant when you don't have any money, but in the long term it will save us money because because at the moment if we want to change it to 20 mph limits, there is significant costs. So I would support the return apart from giving it our full support.
You know, for once I tend to agree with you. That's unusual. Yeah. Stephen?
I think the response is quite balanced in that it recognises the council's priorities and commitments on this in this respect, and the number of schemes we've been able to bring forward under the work that John's done in the past and the support for that. It's suggested that it's a partially supportive response to the detail that the MSP is putting forward, because not because we're concerned about the additional resource requirements, but I think the main thing and the reasons below that statement on partially supportive is the fact that implementation of 20 mph schemes in this way will give us 20 mph limits. It might not get us what we really want, which is reduced accidents through vehicle speed reduction. And I think that's the point that's been made in the response, that it's not just we're embracing this proposal fully, whereas what we actually want them to do is to go and think harder about how they realise the objectives, which is accident reduction and an environment that active travel can flourish in.
Douglas?
Thank you, Chair. This is a highly emotive subject and one that is very close to my heart personally, being an ex-police officer. I agree with Councillor Brodie to a degree in relation to certain areas for 20 mile an hour, i.e. schools, community centres. There's a need for that, I would say, but overall, there's no such thing as an accident. You know, this is in the report. It refers to accidents all the time. There's not an accident. It's not an accident. It's driver error. That's what it is. And it was stopped from being called a road traffic accident many years ago, and it was a road traffic collision. It's a collision. It's a person responsible for driving that vehicle. Whether that be, you know, walking out in front of somebody, it's a due care and attention. But anyway, that aside, I'll go away from that subject. It's basically, it's going to cost the council an awful lot of money, and I don't see that any future cause for it really. I mean, we're struggling just now with 30 mile an hour limits. I mean, I'm quite heavily involved with community organisations that are doing it through community empowerment in their own certain areas, and they're quite glad to take that on board, and I'm working closely with Police Scotland as well. So that's an issue we're covering. But I know for a fact just now we're struggling to police any 30 mile an hour limit, and most of the casualties are caused on 60 mile an hour roads. And that's where your fatalities are. That's where the significant increase in car collisions is. So, you know, while I support it to a certain degree, I think for a council and an overall cost, you know, it's a struggle.
Yeah, I think that sort of clearly indicates the consultation responses as to how do you afford some of these issues. I mean, the 20 mile an hour zones that we actually have in places around schools and all that have been, you know, well planned and that. But we've also got the 20 mile an hour zones in Edinburgh and places like that, and up and down the country where I've seen significant decreases in potential accidents, because you can't measure something that hasn't happened, you know. But I think what we're looking for here is basically this consultation to go back, and I agree with Stephen on the, you know, partially agree side of things, but because we don't know what's actually coming round the corner budget-wise and things like that. Take your point, ex-policeman, and that you've probably seen more road traffic collisions than I would like to say. So, Steve, you want to come back on anything there?
Nope, I don't think there was anything else to add, Chair. Thanks.
Douglas?
Yep. Yeah, just come back to that point, yeah. Another thing that does concern me is the fact that if we're going to put these 20 mile an hour things in through the Scottish Government, then you're going to have to increase street furniture, i.e. speed cushions, speed humps. That's what they're saying, chicane. So we're going to create an additional cost for that as well and cause more backlog in relation to traffic. And I was speaking to somebody the other day there that said that they nearly hit somebody on a bicycle that was coming out of Palmerston Drive because they were spending too much time concentrating on the speed cushions they were going over on Terrego Street. You know, so this is an issue as well. People tend to concentrate too much on particular street furniture that's there to prevent excess speed, you know, and we have an issue with that.
And I think also in the consultation it talks about not just the horizontal barriers but the vertical barriers as well, which could sometimes help that situation. And of course, we're always looking at cycle paths, cycle routes, that type of thing. I think it's just an overall traffic management issue that we need to discuss, but this is a particular consultation on 20 mile an hour speed limits, which I think, you know, looking around the room, there is support there for. Whether it's fully supported may not be the case, but certainly partially supported because of the issues that Steve had raised and yourself. So I think going forward, that partially supported thing might be the way to actually go in this area. Jim McComb.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to question E on page 348 and the explanation on 349, I agree that there is likely to be a financial impact on Police Scotland, undoubtedly. But with regard to the other two services mentioned, NHS and Fire and Rescue, surely the likely impact there is going to be beneficial, that their costs should reduce. And we have made no comment on that area.
Stephen, how are you?
In terms of the question, yes. So E, it's asking for, it's suggesting that you respond in relation to the NHS and police and fire and rescue. I think in relation to the NHS, there would be, and fire and rescue service, there would be minimal difference. I don't see that there'd be a lot of difference for them in terms of the costs, unless we're actually saying that it does realise significant accident reduction.
Chair, that is the point. If this reduces the number of accidents, there must be a net saving for NHS and fire and rescue.
I think the point that's been made in the response is that what's been proposed, and again this comes back to the partial support, is that it won't always achieve the speed reductions that will give accident reductions. It's only if we know we're implementing these 20-mile-an-hour limits that we actually see accident reductions, that we would see benefits flowing through to the NHS and fire and rescue services.
Jeff? Yeah, I'm generally supportive, like everybody else, in terms of the response. And I think it is a way which we need to go, these 20 mile an hour, particularly within our residential estates, which are different from the main roads which run through the town. I think we need to put priority onto the residential estates. And I think to a certain extent that also includes education of drivers, that there's no reason why I have to do 30 mile an hour through a residential estate merely because the law says you can do that in most areas. It's no more difficult to enforce a 20 mile an hour zone than it is a 30 mile an hour zone, given the number of police hours we can actually put into just monitoring these areas. And as I say, it's also to do with community resilience. Heath Hall, for example, not wishing to be parochial, but just using it as a pilot. We've been working up there for years to try and bring in a 20 mile an hour zone within the estate. The community council are very supportive of it. They've been trying to arrange a meeting of the community in order to endorse this. What they don't want is more speed bumps because of the problems which have been indicated already. Some of these speed bumps are dangerous. The new ones into Regal Street, no matter how slowly you go over there, you get your insides shaken out, and you can see people swerving around them to try and avoid the effect of that. So they don't work. They damage the road surface. So it does come down to other ways we do. And I know the regulations have changed so that signage actually counts as traffic calming. We've got plenty of lampposts in our estate, so it's just a question of putting 20 mile an hour zones, reminders on these lampposts, and I think people gradually will begin to obey them. So I think, it is something which we need to pursue. There may be a cost in the end, but, it's something else which we're going to have to face at the end of the day.
I'll take that on board. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I actually fully support this. I think the 20 mile an hour limit, this is a 20 mile an hour limit. I'm not a qualified roads officer or policeman or whatever, but a 20 mile an hour limit is different from a 20 mile an hour zone where you actually have to put measures in to slow down traffic, as far as I understand it. Whereas a 20 mile an hour limit is one at the moment where we would consider that where the traffic drives on average quite slowly anyway. I agree with what Jeff said in terms of we've got the street furniture there, we could put up signs. I think it's more of a model or a cultural shift in terms of why drive at 30, it's aye been. Why not 20, it's potentially safer. I don't really see anything beyond the initial, we'd maybe have to test how fast traffic was going and then carry out the work to do that, but that's effectively a one phase cost, if you like. It wouldn't necessarily be an ongoing cost. And I think the benefits are deeper than just what's maybe suggested. The other thing I did want to raise particularly is to do with value. We are charged as councillors with ensuring best value, and I'm a bit concerned about the first answer. Where effectively what we seem to be saying is we don't really think this is the most effective way of achieving something, but I tell you what, if you give us the money, we'll do it. Right? So effectively we're saying the proposal is supported if subsequent funding is funded, if resource requirements are funded. And to me that's not really upholding the best value thing. We either think it's got a good rationale for doing it and it'll deliver the results we want and therefore it's worth pursuing, or maybe we will do that, but if you give us the money we'll do it anyway. So I can't see how that squares with best value, and that's just maybe a semantic point rather than anything to do with the actual response. But I think we need to be careful about things like that because it sends out a mixed message about why we do our business.
Stephen?
Could I just, which statement particularly was it, Councillor Thompson? On which page?
So page 346, Please explain the reasons for your response. And in the second paragraph it says, the objective it seeks to achieve is supported, but the proposal may be an ineffective way of achieving it. And then the next one leaps on to, but the proposal is supported if subsequent additional resource requirements are appropriately funded. So, you can see what the difference in thinking there is.
And I think, yes, I think, yeah, possibly some clarification there would be required, would be useful. I think effectively we're understanding if these proposals go through, there will be regulations. We won't get out of implementing them, so that it would be useful to have the appropriate funding to be able to implement them. But yes, I think we can clarify that text slightly, yes.
Okay, members, before we go to the recommendation, this is in fact John Howell's last EEI committee before he retires at the end of October. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank him and wish him all the best in your retirement, John, but I'm sure you're coming to Annandale and Eskdale area committee in September, where I'll probably have to say something along the lines again, or at least Stephen will. But good luck in your future anyway. Okay, members, the recommendation is members are asked to agree the proposed council response at Appendix 3 with that clarification and its submission to Mark Ruskell, MSP. Agreed? Okay, thank you. We will now move on to item 20, which is the Newton Stewart Flood Protection Scheme update report. This report provides members with details of the recent work undertaken to progress the Newton Stewart Flood Protection Scheme and asks members to approve the next steps in the project development. The Head of Infrastructure and Transportation Project Manager and Team Leader Flood Risk Management will take any questions on the report. Members? Probably the ones that were actually going to ask the questions. I thought Newton Stewart have had to leave the area. But I think this reduced amounts of options that potentially go forward to the next stage. Steve, I think that's the clarification that you require for the committee. Is that right?
Yes, I mean effectively it's reporting on the volume management exercise that two of the ward members have been involved in, and the community council and other interested parties, and it's really just keeping committee up to speed and on side with the decision-making process to go from something like 29 options, about the complete range of options, down to about 10 that we're actually taking forward with a bit more detail. We'll go through another volume management exercise with the community council and the other interested parties, and that will get us to a preferred option, which again we'll bring back to committee.
Graham, you were obviously there that night. So.
No, I wasn't. I was keeping well clear of it. Because I knew it would come down to members at the end of the day. And I think it's maybe noticeable it was two new members who did attend, who maybe, in retrospect, wish they maybe hadn't attended. But no, I mean, in general terms, very good report, and it's whittling down the options to a sizable and acceptable number. There's two things that I've got. One is that in 2.7.3 on page 382, CVCC, which is Cree Valley Community Council, noted in a letter to DG Council ahead of the VM1 meeting that this option was a high preference, with the reason being the importance of protecting the commercial heart of the town. There was a consensus among stakeholders at the VM1 meeting that there was an inevitability, that takes a bit getting your teeth around, that some form of direct defences would be required. Now, it has been brought to my attention that is maybe overstating what the Cree Valley Community Council actually said, which was, we feel that the existing wall on the west bank, which runs from Tudor Tree just north of police station, should be built slightly higher. And I'm totally in agreement with that. So maybe overstating that thing. And the other thing I would like to point out was that in 2.11.2, there is a table which says technical 33%, economic 43%, this is on page 390, environmental 28%, social 59%, overall score 59%. That doesn't add up. If you could just maybe look at that again, somebody. If your highest one's 59, your overall score can't be 59 unless all the rest are 59. Just a technical point or a clerical, I think it's about a clerical error.
Who's going to answer that one?
we take on board the comments. Thank you about the statements on the option 6 in terms of the height of the defences. But again, that's one of the options that's going forward for the detailed consideration and will be reviewed again. In terms of the multi-criteria assessment, my understanding is that these are, we're not looking at percentages of percentages, so the overall score is looking at all the scores for these 4 criteria. It's the same with the other assessments that have been made. In terms of the overall score can be lower or higher than the individual scores. It would depend on the weighting and the individual, whether technical was weighted higher than economic or environmental or social. So what it's showing you, I think, for each of the options is under the technical, what was the kind of score, and then overall, when looking at all the criteria, within these 4 kind of headings, there was subsets of criteria as well that were used to evaluate the options.
Just be appreciated if you look at it again, Stephen, and just clarify and make sure that is absolutely right, because to me, when you see a table like that, and the highest one's 59%, and the rest are in the teens, or some are in the teens, it doesn't add up. But anyway, I'll leave that with you. Okay. But overall, Chair, I think it's a good report, and it's heading in the right direction, and I think at the end of the day we will get options which will be acceptable, and then we have to try and find the money.
Okay, thank you. Take that on board, Stephen. Yep. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Were the options computer modelled, or did it come down to professional judgment?
Yeah, I think some of them have been computer modelled, and some of them just a judgment call. Obviously, we're looking at your 10 options, which we got down to. Most of them are getting modelled, and that will form the sort of process for the VM2.
Jim?
I would just add that the 10 which are recommended to go forward seem entirely logical to me.
Okay, thank you. Graham?
I just come back in, Chair, just to point out that in 2015, when the actual flood damage was done, the bulk of the damage was caused by a wall which we had rebuilt as a council about 5 or 6, 7 years prior to that collapsing. And it was built because the one that was there wasn't considered strong enough, so we took it down and rebuilt it, and it collapsed. So just hope that when we do build the defences, that they are built to a proper standard.
Mother Nature is a force to be reckoned with. Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree 2.1 and note 2.2? Okay, thank you. Okay, members, I haven't any other business apart from the one excluded item. Can we get the other members back in before we start? Exempt item, it's not excluded item. Yeah, look, the other members come in. Yeah. So, item 22 is we consider adoption resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A4 and paragraph 6 and 8 of the part 1 of schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Is that agreed? Okay, can we switch everything off?